Hello, one and all, and welcome to Weekly Manga Recap here on June the 17th of 2020. I am Nick here alongside Chris.
That's me.
And I'm very tired, but we've got a lot of manga stuff to talk
Nick,
about.
did you do another 12-hour stream this week?
Without you.
It's like, Nick, it was only last week we were doing the 12-hour stream. You're like, well, that would explain why no one was there.
just like, I'm sure Chris will be here soon.
So this was a weird thing I found as a result. So we did the whole charity stream last week. And by the way, we donated the $6,000. We even had a little afterwards from that. So it was very, very cool. And you'll notice if you watch that episode, we started like kind of like, yeah, all right, let's do this. We're like home stretch. And then by the end, clearly both of us are just wiped. I got done recording. I went downstairs just to relax. And I've been doing fasting recently. So after like a certain time of the day, you can't have calories. So I got those like bubbly things.
Oh, okay.
And just because it has a taste, it's not water. And I was sitting down and I was like, why do my ears hurt so much? And I sat there, my ears were like red. And I just sat there. It's like, I'm going to ice my ears down. I just sat there with the can next to my ears. And I was like, the human body's a fucking mess. This is the only real like situation that developed physically from the thing is I was like, I have to ice my ears down.
I don't know, man. These headphones are really cheap, so I don't know why I didn't have any of those problems. Maybe my ears are just like nice and they're like, yes, I will fold around whatever you place them into, and they're like, like they kind of like grasp out with their tendrils and snugly hold on to the headphones for me or something.
Well, I have these giant monster ears, so it's just a byproduct of, I guess, them being very large and then having like, because my headset like completely encloses on the ears,
right?
So it's kind of like noise canceling. I think when you do that for 12 hours, basically, your ears are just like, oh man, I need to get some fresh air. What's going on over there? They want to get out. They want to blossom into the world.
After we finished doing the recording the podcast last week, and we were both just like, it's close enough to 12 hours. Good night.
Yeah.
I literally like went into bed immediately afterward, and I just kind of like just like lay face down, just still for about half an hour, and I got up like, all right, and then I went, because I I get up at like 9 o'clock, and I don't usually go to sleep until 1 or 2 in the morning. But, it was 10 o'clock by this point. And then I just, was like, I need to lie down for a bit. Okay, I'm fine. And then I'll come back to my usual.
You were like, batteries recharged. You sprung back up.
Yeah, that did it. That's all I needed after exhausting myself. But no, it's had like lingering effects for like the past week. I need to like regain control over the sleep cadence that I had prior to that.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why we're starting this recording late is because I took a nap and I woke up on time, but my computer decided to fuck itself over while I was neglecting it for attention. So here we are. And Chris, we've got so much
to talk about.
This is such a big week for some of the manga we cover. We've got a new manga beginning. We've got a manga ending. We've got an anime announcement, and all sorts of things. So
yeah, we do.
Let's do this shit. My Hero Academia. It's
hero!
Oh, right. You got to do one for every chapter.
There's got to be one for all of them.
I don't know if I'm a fan of this expanding gimmick. Number 275, Encounter Part 2. There's a cover page after the first page where there's Aizawa hanging out with a kitty. A very, very handsome kitty.
Yeah. There's much worse cover pages this week, so by the nature of it not being basically pornography, it's like top half at least, because Eden Zero had 16 cover pages this week.
Hey, Eden Zero didn't show any pussy, I'll have you know. It was, hey, it's a pun.
Look at that. Very clever.
Shigaraki's got the quirk search from Ragdoll, as was hinted at last week. And as he explains to himself in a little bit of thought of a, just like, by the way, just so you know how I know what to look for, apparently all the data on people that the previous person used the quirk on, I have all that too. So, which is a little bit weird because we've had it explained to us previously that some quirks, you know, if you copy them, then they don't just have all the stuff that's built into them. I don't know. Maybe one All for One's thing is different from just copying the base quirk and just steals everything.
Yeah, I guess the idea would be that if you just take it as opposed to copying it, then you get all the benefits from it.
Yeah. I guess also it's different from suppressing and destroying quirks, and so I'm sure that it's just like it works the way that the plot demands it work, and that's basically it. So Endeavor is chasing after him, of course, and meanwhile Endeavor is being contacted by Deku, who is trying to explain, you know, like, oh, I'm going off in this direction. Let me know if Shigaraki, you know, changes course as I'm heading through all the dust and smoke. And Endeavor's like, look, I'm busy saving everyone's ass right now, so I'm not going to bother to do that. And then all of a sudden, as he's saying that, Shigaraki suddenly stops, lands after one of his big leaps, and then flies off in a different direction. And he's like, oh, he did alter course. All right. And Deku says, okay, that confirms what I was thinking. So he's after me. So I'm going to try and lure him away. Shigaraki overhears Endeavor shouting across his communicator about this. And he's like, well, that's really annoying that they just they're all linked up like that. I better put a stop to that. Deku is, of course, being followed by Bakugo as this is happening. He says, like, you know, you shouldn't follow me because, you know, but Bakugo's just like, I'm going to because I'm the only one who knows what's going on, so you don't need to explain it to me. And he's like, oh, okay, thanks. Bakugo proceeds to talk like an internet forum user, basically. Because he says, what, you think you're the main character now? No, I'm getting a little sick of this character type showing up in series just because it's kind of happening over and over again.
It's happened a lot recently. The character seems to reference in a meta sense that they're not the main character.
Well, I mean, it is a thing that people do, like, you know, because there's that thing that people will say, like, oh, NPCs, and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Bakugo does it now, apparently. Doubt in Mashle does it. And other people do it. So it's getting annoying seeing it pop up repeatedly as like a trope.
I don't mind it as much for Bakugo just because it seems to fit his personality a bit more, that he doesn't like to be overshadowed. It was maybe just a weird... I should say weird. I'm not a huge fan of the choice of words there, but it's not a bad choice of words.
I understand what you mean. Bakugo also is refusing to let Deku handle this alone because he still feels guilt over All Might's, defeat and the loss of his powers back in that big fight with All for One, which he actually freely admits to at this point. So he says, listen, One for All is just the bait for me. I'm going to get payback for that day. That's what I'm going to do. And Deku's like, yeah, all right, fine. But internally, Bakugo is acknowledging the fact that Deku has made a lot of progress with using his full cowling, and Deku keeps on getting stronger, and Bakugo is having to work really hard not to be left behind. He thinks back to when they were kids, and Deku was always trailing behind him, and he's like, no, I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to stay a loser. So we cut over to Shigaraki, who has figured out the combination of quirks he wants to use, and he combines an air blast and radio waves and launches a blast over at Endeavor, and immediately everyone's radio links just get overloaded and stop working. I assume we get like confirmation that one person's is going crazy. Anyway, Shigaraki shows up promptly in front of Deku and Bakugo, and I think Deku gets an image of like he and Bakugo disintegrating as Shigaraki reaches out towards them as they realize how close to death they are. But before that can happen, Gran Torino shows up, grabs both of them. He's like, "What the fuck are you guys doing?" And he explains that that Shigaraki's decay is even more powerful now. Even being hit with a stray piece of rubble will kill you. You don't stand a chance, and us heroes aren't done yet. So hang on, because we're going to bring it down, every one of us who's left. Ryukyu shows up. She lashes out towards Shigaraki, who, of course, just is like, okay, goes to touch her hand, and then he immediately realizes, as her hand keeps on coming towards him, oh, she's not disintegrating. I'm not sure what happens then. I think that she hits him, but it's kind of weird because we only see like him fly through the air, and it doesn't look like he's really been hit because he's not detailed very well. Anyway, Aizawa shows up, and he remembers the great sacrifice that the number 6 hero Crust made. Oh, Crust, we hardly knew ye. We did hardly know ye. Anyway. Aizawa thinks to himself, about all the people that have been affected by Shigaraki's actions, and he just says, "Don't you lay a finger on my students." And of course, his eyes are focused entirely on Shigaraki. And Shigaraki's like, "You're pretty cool, Eraserhead." But he doesn't seem all that worried right now. So, seems that Aizawa's quirk at least still works on Shigaraki with all of the power that he's got currently. I'm sure that they're going to just negate his quirks and take him down and beat him, and that'll be the end of the series.
It's gonna end nice and neat there. So how concerned are you for Aizawa right now?
Pretty concerned.
I was gonna say, because this definitely feels like a big stand moment, but there's so many, like, we already know Gigantomachia's around, Toga's going, like, it's very easy for someone to just interfere, and Aizawa, who's clearly now just shown himself to be a very big threat to Shigaraki's domination.
Shigaraki's also got the quirk erase bullets, so there are all sorts of different ways that Aizawa can be dealt with that he's not going to be able to defend against, because he's just going to, he's going to look at you. So I guess we'll see how things go. And yeah, this kind of seems just like, the little flicker of hope that the heroes are going to have right now. But hey, things are getting pretty intense in this series. I do love how things, kind of quickly came together in this chapter as Deku tried to get away from everyone. They were like, "No, we're going to fight the guy," and they all kind of converged on him. So
yeah, Aizawa was cool. I like it.
Okay. Spy Family, Chapter 28. This was a weird chapter.
Was there a Spy Family this week?
There was a Spy Family that it came out the same day as the Jump series did.
Yeah, I absolutely read it. Nick, you start, and I'm gonna catch up with you several ways through.
We start this chapter actually in a little flashback, something that happened last month, and we see that someone is apologizing to this company president, as he talks about how they're talking about the Desmond Group, and but the president just says to the worker who's apologizing to him, saying, "Hey, say no more. There was no other option. Our company is in dire straits financially. I only wish I knew how to tell my son that in less than a month's time, Gloom and Pharmaceuticals will cease to exist." And his son is listening in meanwhile. We cut over to Anya's school, and the kids are outside doing their cleaning duty and stuff like that. Anya is saying, "Oh, I'm sure that I'm glad that things are going well because I didn't get a tonitrous bolt, a demerit, blah blah blah." And there's a really weird little moment where she's talking with Becky, and Kazania mentions like, yeah, because Papa can be a real monster. And she's referring to it, on his missions and stuff. And Becky's like, oh wow, yeah, parents can be really hard on their kids with their expectations, but monster mode Lloyd sounds really hard. That's all right, honey. Keep it down on the down low. Um, Damien is being a weirdo and like declaring move names while he's like spinning around with his broom, but he's 6, so he's allowed to do that basically. um, and of course, his hangers on are like, and a bunch of other admirers are like, "Oh my gosh, he's so cool! Look at him! He was so smart getting the Stella Star and stuff like that." Ba, 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 ba. But Anya all of a sudden hears one person thinking that he hates Damien, and it's the Gloomin kid. And he thinks to himself about how, oh my gosh, my plan failed. I had my butler hire a spy to change his test scores. I don't understand what went wrong. So, what happened here? We found out this kid's name is George, and Anya's worried about that. And Becky's like, hey, Anya, you're always like paying attention to Damien. Do you like him? And Anya's like, I want to know more about him. Oh my God, are you falling for this new kid too? Becky's weird, but in an understandable way. If she's got one thing on her mind, then I understand why she's jumping to the conclusions she does. Anyway, George apparently is always gloomy. He's got these weird, constantly slanted eyes and stuff. And all of a sudden, he tries to go about his backup plan to ruin Damien's life by trying to get him in trouble by like framing him for leaving a cigarette butt on the ground. When Damien confronts him, he tries to pretend that he got knocked to the ground by it and stuff. And so, that, of course, Damien's hangers-on are like, that asshole's lying, and exactly those words, because they're 6, so they say those kinds of words. Some 6-year-olds talk like that. Shut up, you don't know me.
Yeah. Hey, Nick might be an expert in this.
I'm an expert on 6-year-olds. Wait.
Don't
take that. Hold on now.
We gotta cut that part out, and we have to replace it with a PSA
very tired
now.
This week. I'm very rambly. So, Anya, however, also actually stands up for Damien and just says what happened. And the teacher who came over to confront the kids about this recognizes that Anya's kind of trouble, and so he's just like, I'm gonna leave this alone. I'm just gonna leave this to someone else to handle. So, Damien is shocked that Anya actually bothered to help him and stuff. Becky is like, oh, you managed to show Damien how you feel. And he's like, what the fuck's going on? And Damien is, tsundere about it, basically. But then he just turns his wrath over on George, and it's like, why did you do that? And so George explains the situation, being that, his family's company went bankrupt, and so because of this, your family's business, Damien, drove mine to bankruptcy. So he wanted to take it, he wanted to take his revenge on him by getting him to fail the midterm or do something. And he even said, like, I thought if you failed the midterm, then maybe your family would be too distracted to bother mine anymore. And Damien goes on to explain, like, look, we didn't drive you out of business, and I'm sure there's some other reason that this happened, and it has nothing to do with me. But George says, look, that doesn't make my having to leave school any easier. With our business gone, our family will be on the street tomorrow, and that'll be the end of my Eden education. I envy you, Damien. You have a prominent family, you're popular, you're still a star material. You're not trash like me. You're nothing like me. And Damien's hangers-on are like, Damien earned the Stella Star on his own, and the only thing keeping you from being popular is you mope. And he starts crying because he's 6. So eventually he gets so upset that even Damien's like, hey, do you want me to like get you a juice? I don't know. And gradually George kind of opens up a bit, and he's like, well, I guess that would be nice. And then he's like, if you let me wear your Stella Star, that'd be nice. Okay. Then next, and so he's kind of pushing his luck a little bit more and more. and he's gradually kind of driving everyone's patience. But eventually, people actually do kind of open up to him. They sing their school anthem for him because he's going to miss the chorus performance because of moving out of school. And everyone's celebrating together in a big circle. They're all happy. And everyone's like, "Hey, here, why don't you take a little bit of my stationery? Here, you can have my favorite book. You can have my watch." They're giving him all these nice, lovely little thank you gifts. And they're like, "Hey, you have to have fun at whatever school you go to. You always be a part of our hall, Cecile Hall." And he says, "I'll do my best. I'll turn this pain in my heart and my strength. My life may be one of endless hardship, but I will face it, walking tall and proud." And he walks off into the distance, saying, "Farewell, my friends. Farewell, my beloved Eden Academy." And he goes,
like it's everything
home,
except
walks out
like
the gate the last time.
it's like the moment like with like raising a fist and don't you forget about me plays. Like
Yeah.
it's like everything about it's like as final as it could be.
And then we have the rest of the chapter. So Anya goes home, and she just basically like tells the whole story to her parents, and like Yours really moved. And Lloyd's like, I'm not really sure how Gloom and Pharmaceuticals being bought out equates to bankruptcy. And of course, Anya doesn't know what that means because she's dumb. And this George goes home and he's got all of his presents and flowers and stuff with him. And his father says like, "Well, our company was near insolvency. The Desmond Group saved us by buying us out. I'm deeply grateful to them for making a place for myself and our R&D teams, among others, at the new company. I mean, yeah, I'm not the president anymore, but the Gloom and corporate name that doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, I have a job and I'm grateful for that." And George is like, "You mean I'm not going to be sold into slavery and I can still go to school? What are you talking about?"
The hell are you talking about, boy?
You're going to keep going to school. Yeah, tomorrow and every day after. Have you done your homework? And George has to go back to school the next day. You're like, slowly come to him like, "You better fucking give back all the stuff that we gave you."
It's very like hard when we're just like, "Oh, poor kid." But, as a reader, you're like, "Good, I like George. He's fun."
Well, and Damien's like saying like, "You better pay us back for that juice we bought you," and Anya just kind of goes and gives a little comforting pat on the shoulder. It's a really weird chapter. It's like all build up for one punchline, and then when the punchline happens, it's like, "Oh, okay, this chapter I guess was pretty good." I didn't really like the chapter as I was reading it, but then after it's over, it's like that's actually really worth the build up. So.
Plus, now we know who hired Daybreak.
Yeah,
a kid with a stoop with a
so.
bunch of money, basically.
It's a very like it's a very Spy Family thing to do too. It's just like, why did this spy get here? So some kid had a stupid misunderstanding about what was going on. He was rich, so he just gave a bunch of money to sabotage his classmate he didn't like. All right. And so comes to a close this arc, I guess, or was this the afterword? I don't know. Was it?
Yeah, that's a ticket.
All right. We gotta talk about actage.
Actage! Lights! Camera! Who gives a fuck?
Oh, wow. Okay. So,
It's fun for everybody in them.
Because it includes the Who Gives a Fuck for you, I guess?
Yeah, it's fun for me!
116. More! That's what the chapter title is.
Yeah.
So, last time, Kay went in for an audition for a new part, apparently to be playing someone connected to this older woman. And by older, I mean like 30. And she pulled a big stunt by posing as someone else. But she was waiting in the waiting area as herself and then put her disguise on, I guess, when she slipped into the bathroom. I don't know. Anyway, so basically the point that she wanted to make was I wanted to show that I could play lots of different characters. And we actually see the process that she went through in order to prepare for this, which was she impersonated, starting with a classmate of hers named Inai, and was just kind of like posing as her and stuff. And basically, she got this idea from Kuriyama, and so she's just, imitating this girl's mannerisms, her laughter, her gait, and stuff like that. And she like follows her all the way home from school in order to do this. And then over time, she actually kind of like develops this image of who Imai is from earlier in her life. And as she does this, she's acting more and more closely like her. And then she starts to see more sides of Imai because she starts off as, this plain-looking girl with glasses, and then she goes out and apparently is like basically doing what's it called? Compensated dating, it seems like, because she goes and puts on a fancy dress and meets a guy in a suit and stuff. I might be jumping to a conclusion by saying that. Maybe she's going on a date, but I don't know. It seems a little bit weird.
It could be a date. The person she's with seems to be coded like an adult, like with the suit and being that much taller. It could just be another high school kid who's dressed up a lot, but it was something where I was like, I guess that's what they're going for.
Also, the way that their jawline is drawn, it seems to indicate to me that they're kind of older. Anyway, from this, she's like, sees all these different sides of this one person. And so she's like, oh, this is fun. Acting is really fun. And she's imitating more and more people around her in her class. And you just think to herself, more. Gotta imitate more people. And what I think it's the director of the project claps his hands and says, hey, Yanagi, one question. So you're a totally different person in each scene we do. Just how many characters did you bring with you today? And Kei kind of smugly, says 12, but each person has different faces, so maybe it's more like 30. And if 30 isn't enough, I'll make it 100. And if that's not enough, I'll do 1,000. I can play any role, so please give me one. And
I tried this same line to the writers of Simpsons. They didn't put me on the cast. I was like, I could do everything. I could be I could do Sylvester Stallone.
We already got 5 voice actors who can do that. Get out.
And I headed over to Family Guy, and they were just like, sorry, Seth MacFarlane already has a monopoly on 80% of the voices. And I was like, oh, man. And then I headed over to Big Mouth, and they're like, sorry, Nick Kroll gets first rights to do any voice on the show. I was like, jeez.
Time machine, and I went back 30 years, and they're like, nope, Mel Blanc.
I'm like, there's just no way to get ahead.
Guess not. So, this surprised Actress Lady, and I have to say, so this part of Actage made me think, man, Kei's a lot more interesting when she just comes off as, like, vaguely sociopathic when she's doing this whole acting thing. Because so often she's just kind of like, this kind of, mostly happy young girl who's just kind of happy to be doing something that she enjoys and getting paid well for so that she can provide for her family. But in this case, the lengths that she goes to, like stalking people and following them around in order to figure out how to act more like them, and then just kind of like sucking that part of their soul out of them and incorporating it into herself in order to improve her acting ability, and being like, more, I have to have more and more. And then she's like, yes, I can be anyone. Yeah, that's more interesting to me than just like, I'm an actor. So
I'm like, is Kei the bad guy? Is that what we're trying to get at?
Can we just like code Chiyoko to be like, like heroic antagonist and Kei as like villain protagonist, and that'd be, I don't know.
I want Araya the next time he sees her to be like, wait, what did you do? No, I meant like ask. I meant ask permission to say like, hey, do you mind?
That's what actors actually do, is they actually like, go to places and be like, hey, do you mind if I observe you for this role I want to do?
You imagine? I want Leonardo DiCaprio picks up. I don't know why Martin Scorsese is making a movie about middle-aged podcasting, but like I wanted to see Leonardo DiCaprio in like my bushes with binoculars, just be like, I don't know, man. I feel like if you want, you can just come in and talk. He's like, no, it'll ruin it.
I'm not here. So we cut outside the audition room, and we see two of the other girls who were with in Kei's group walking out, and they're both basically have been blown away by Kei's preparation for this, because they're like, I didn't get the role, so I want to prepare myself better. I'm going to train myself harder, that kind of thing. And so Kei is congratulated by, oh gosh, I forget her name. Kuriyama's assistant. Anyway, she's there.
That's fine. That's all the name she needs.
And Natsu, the idol girl who was there, and we saw things from her perspective while they were actually in the audition. She doesn't leave right away. She actually talks to Kei, and she's like, "Hey, I wanted to ask you, is this the real you right now, or are you like just doing another character, basically?" And Kei says, "Well, they're all the real me." Okay, so Kei's a little crazy. Yes, they're all me. They are all part of the collective.
We're gonna go into Kay's closet one day, and it's just a bunch of faces that have been carved off with a dagger and placed onto like little mannequin heads.
I am Sarah, and Sarah is me.
I guess I just didn't really read this page, because that is a very disturbing thing to say. I can understand, I guess it's just Kay's way of saying they're all facets of me. That because I have some way to relate to it, thus I can understand it, and it could be something I use. But it does sound weird. She's like, I just followed a bunch of people around, and they're all now part of me. Like, all right, Ermac, fuck off.
It's really weird because, like, you could do a lot of different things in manga, and based on the tone that you present them with, normal things can seem badass or seem heroic or whatever. And it feels like this could have just been something that just seemed awesome, but something about the way that she spoke and looked while she was bragging about it was like, no, there's something weird about this.
Yeah.
So I have to wonder how intentional this kind of creepy vibe coming off of her is. Anyway, Ren Tamaki comes over to Kei and gets immediately just like, I don't believe in personal space, and puts her arm around her shoulders. And she asks how Sumiji's doing. And Kei's just like, oh, he didn't come with us today. So she's like, all right, well, I'll see you on the set. She got the role, presumably, anyway. But Kei thinks back to the movie that they went and saw, and just as, I said previously, yeah, she was the girl who was at Tampopo. She wasn't even credited in that movie. She was only credited as Tampopo. So she's like, despite never seeing my face or my name, you were able to recognize me, and that was 15 years ago. I'm impressed, because only the movie's crew knew that was me. Yeah, well, yeah. After all, you saw more, because, I feel kind of embarrassed now, because you saw more than just that, right? Because you saw I wasn't 1/10 as good as you are now. But 2 years after that movie, I surpassed where you are now in name and essence. I'm a late bloomer. And Kuriyama's assistant is looking at him like, what's going on here? Is she like challenging her? I don't know. Given the way that Ren acts around her, I'm sure that there's something else going on. Anyway, Ren then goes on to say, this is the first time I've been envious of someone's youth. Do you know why? And Kei doesn't, so she says, a movie is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Only children can play children's roles. Tell that to voice actors. Only a girl can play a girl's part. Kuriyama's assistant starts to say something, but Ren kind of ignores her and says, if I were 10 years younger, I would be by Sumiji's side now, not you. And it makes me jealous, and I hate feeling jealous. What should I do? I'll counterattack by making him regret this. I wish I could have shot this movie with Tamaki, but I missed my chance. I'll have to make do with Yonagi. That's what I'll make him think. And when she says this, she just steps forward and just puts her arms around Kei's shoulders like she's going to give her a hug. So clearly she's like doing some sort of intimidation tactic. But I don't know. Given the way that this series has portrayed Chiyoko and Kei's relationship, I'm going like, is there just going to be like vaguely lesbian vibes to like every single rivalry that Kei has in this series? Because that's very like, I don't believe in personal space. So
I have a theory.
Go ahead.
Ren is not a person. She is a mannequin brought to life that has obtained sentience, and that explains why she has literally one expression, which is mouth open in a smile, eyes pointed forwards. in basically every shot of her, she's doing the exact same expression. And at one point, you're just like, do you get a lot, like, do a lot of flies fly into your mouth? Like, do you get a lot of bugs in there because your mouth's always open? Or are you, or are you smiling and this is like a really, you're like, why are you showing me so much teeth? Is this like a Predator thing?
She's like, she's like talking, but she's just like this the entire time. She never actually moves her lips. So, I see what you mean, because yeah, she does not like drop that smirk almost the entire chapter. She does it like once when Kay surprises her by identifying her, and that's like it. So, I don't know. This is odd, but I'm kind of into it too, because when Actage is weird is when it's most interesting to me. Like how the beginning of this chapter I actually really liked, because it's like Kay's kind of a psychopath, and I'm sort of into that. So, all right, Chris.
All right, let's move on.
We've got pinups to do deep analysis on here.
This is Eden Zero, chapter 98, Advent of the Demon King, and there are 10 pages of color spread fan service stuff about all the characters, because Eden Zero is getting an anime release. That's like the big celebration.
It's only 6 pages, Chris. Don't exaggerate.
It takes 10 pages before you get to manga. So that's how I did. I was like, yeah, it's 10 pages of it. So there's a bunch of color spreads. I literally have very little to say, except that because of the way, they show the cast and the big color spread. One, I don't like that Moscow is in it, because that seems to indicate he's a big character. But I'm not too concerned, because Elfman was on the one for Fairy Tail, and he wasn't an important character at all. So don't need to worry about that. I do have one issue. I didn't think Witch looked like I didn't think she had human skin. Because I assumed she was just an android, and the fact that she was like molded to look like a leotard was just like, oh, that's just how like the robot joints were put together. And now knowing that she's just in a Battle Bunny costume constantly makes the character a lot more depressing to me.
Well, Chris, there wasn't enough sexuality in Eden Zero without that addition, so it was a clearly necessary choice.
Yeah, I guess so.
The one observation that I actually have to make about all of these color spreads, besides Jesus Christ, Hero, is I did not realize that Lamilia, her hair thing, her like ponytail bit, is actually disconnected from her head. So that's actually kind of a cool detail. It's like sci-fi hair extension.
Uh-huh. And then there's a bunch of like bikini shots in case there's something you're interested in. I'm not particularly interested in that because we have a manga to get to, and that's the most interesting thing on the planet, isn't it? Especially this chapter.
That's what gets me turned on, is having black and white images of action that I can barely tell what's going on. So
what are you talking about, Nick? Because Draken Joe has, of course, become a mindless monster who just says, give it to me, give me life, and just punches things. But Shiki looks stupid now, and he's stronger because of it. So he starts using gravity.
Isn't that just shown in a nutshell? He looks stupid now, and that makes him stronger.
I was like, I guess I didn't get the full grasp of the design until I looked at this panel again. And I was like, that looks really dumb. But he uses gravity.
Why does he have, like, what is his cloak thing, his coat with the tails? Or is that a scarf? It's all the same color, so it's hard to tell.
Are those supposed to be his ears, or are those horns? Why are they covered in, like, digital... You know what? Who cares? Because he uses his gravity powers, and his gravity powers are much more powerful now. He's literally able to pull the entire room towards him. And it's creating like a black hole. Like, that's how dangerous this is. So, which is like, Shiki's become more powerful. He's using his overdrive. That means we can focus in on this problem. They're going to blow up the big satellite, but they're like, oh, it has a shield. I don't know. They plug stuff into them, and they're like, we'll use our ether power. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of tentacle stuff. It's gross. Yeah. I guess they do at least reaffirm that bondage is the only confirmed way to stop ether gear power, because Hamura's like, I can't use my ether gear in this state. So Rebecca gets her guns out, shoots the tentacles, frees Homura.
Don't worry, Wonder Woman. I'll set you free.
Yeah, and then Homura cuts off the rest of them. So there's that. Shiki stops Big Draken Joe's hand, and then he's like, "Oh no, laser beam should fire now, fire!" But they blew up the satellite before it could fire, so they saved the day.
Hooray!
Yep. And then Draken Joe's like, "No, no!" And then we get a flashback, Nick, to Draken
The
Joe.
character arc. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. Just you go. I'll give this thought in afterwards.
Okay. So Draken Joe gets a flashback to he lived on a planet where basically it was Logan's Run, where nobody lives until they're past 15. Everyone stops at 15 apparently, and then they just die. They're guinea pigs specifically. They're being used for some science experiment, and all the kids are like, "Who cares? Why would anyone want to live longer? Being 15 years old is long enough." And I guess children would be that dumb. I feel like if we had a lifespan of 5,000 years, people would be like, "Can't I get to 6,000?" But these are stupid children, so they don't know better. So Draken Joe, he refuses this. He's the oddball. He's the one person who's not on board with this. He wants to live, so he learns alchemy.
He wants to live forever.
Yeah.
He wants to however else that song goes by.
Yep. And he learns alchemy to change other people's life into his life, which I guess alchemy could do in a world where magic could do anything. So his reasoning is, then maybe I could grow up and get strong, and I could meet lots of people, and maybe I could make friends. So
because he was unable to make friends as a kid, which means that he was clearly an asshole even back then. So
well, I mean, doesn't this still kind of imply Draken Joe was a sociopath as a child?
Yes,
that he was definitely like, I'll kill people so I can live long and then I can have friends. But Shiki,
so stupid.
Shiki responds to this flashback. It says, "You don't have to do that. I'll be your friend." And
But Chris, how did he see Draken Joe's flashback?
Draken Joe says, "He took my memories. He made them fall into them." No, his gravity pulled them in. And the cat's memories. They fell into this world. So Shiki punches him very, very strong and blows up the evil parts of Draken Joe. And the other dude's just left. And he's like, "Time for you to go to sleep." Bam!
This is so stupid.
Nick, let this be a moment. This a strong moment now. I'm going up to my head. And there's just going to be a loud click. And that's where I'm now turning my brain off for Eden Zero forever. Because this is some straight Kingdom Hearts shit. Where it's like, yeah, he used his gravity to pull in memories. His power is gravity. You're like, alright, yeah, if we're just going to be stupid, let's just go hog wild.
Took you 98 chapters to reach this point for this series. You read Fairy Tail, dude.
No, there was always that holdout, though. Like, maybe this time.
Do you remember back in Bleach when Ichigo like first unveiled his Bankai, and there was this huge deal because like the entire chapter was color, and it was all just Ichigo having the conversation with Byakuya, and then he takes the pose, and then there's the big 2-page reveal of him with holding the new katana, which is the form of his Bankai, and it's like, oh, what a big moment, and you had all this stuff to commemorate this occasion. And Eden Zero is like, well, we have a big, event going on. The anime has just been announced. To commemorate the occasion, here's a whole bunch of really, really uncomfortable cheesecake. And then we're going to have a last-minute character development at the end of a villain's fight as Draken Joe's character arc takes yet another bizarre twist. And then Shiki's going to say something stupid about friendship, and he'll punch him and win immediately. After he uses his powers of gravity to remember things that would be impossible for him to remember. It's beautiful. It's the ultimate Eden Zero chapter.
It's exactly what the hero fan base wants out of an anime announcement. So look, before this chapter, if you had told me what happened, I'd be like, "This is the dumbest, stupidest thing on the planet." This like a clear disconnect. No, now it's just stupid. This is best. This is maybe the best chapter of the week because it's so shamelessly stupid and nonsense. He can just gravity and memories now. It's what he can do. It's how gravity works. I also enjoy the dumbness of Kingdom Hearts, so I guess I have to kind of enjoy this too. Woody just told that Heartless that he has no friends and he should go fuck himself. This is great.
I think I've been waiting for something as stupid that makes me feel as much joy as Dharma invented a video game to find his apprentice. Nothing has made me this happy that is, a stupid manga moment, so...
There's such a joy when Shiki responds to a flashback.
You don't need to do that. I'll be your friend. This is what friends do.
Showy friendship, you can. You're like, wait, what's happening? He punched all the bad parts out. Why did Wise even show up? You didn't do anything.
What if, it'd have been just a little bit different if he was like, you don't need to do that. I'll be your friend. And Dragon Joe's like, oh, really?
He still does it. He's like, I guess I can still change. Bah! Oh, what a fucking joy.
Alright. Oh, alright. Jump starts.
Nick, where'd all that enthusiasm go?
Ayakashi Triangle. It's a new series by Kentaro Yabuki, if that name sounds familiar. He did Black Cat in the 2000s, and then he was the illustrator of To Love Ru for a number of years. So, with that knowledge in mind, I had a pretty good idea of okay, it's probably going to have some weird, dumb fan service in this, because I know what Yabuki likes to draw, and it is girls' body parts. I wasn't wrong, but I will admit that going into this, I do remember people who hated To Love Ru, but liked Black Cat telling me, oh yeah, Yabuki's slumming it right now. He's capable of so much better. Because apparently, his Black Cat is looked higher upon. I've never read it myself.
I have read Black Cat.
You have?
Yeah, that was one of those series that when I first started getting into reading manga, buying the English tankobons, I should just say volumes. That's a weird thing to still be using the Japanese term for. But the English volumes, that was one of the ones that, I think I collected it, or if not, my friend collected it and I borrowed them from him. And I remember kind of liking it at the time. I think, obviously I haven't read it in probably 15 years, maybe 20 years now. No, it had to be 15 years. But I haven't read it in a very long time. I don't remember it being amazing.
Okay.
I can remember it being kind of okay and there being fun characters and some kind of interesting concepts. But it is very battle shonen-y of that time.
And then Yabuki just took some of the characters he liked and then just put them into Love Ru anyway. Yeah. So.
And you could tell the ones he liked. Look, there was a girl who could breathe fire, I think, who wore a Japanese schoolgirl outfit. And
I do remember that. I mean, I didn't read this, but I'm familiar with some of the characters. I think that a lot of people were really into the character designs in that series. So.
I like the dude with the top hat who looked like a 90s band musician, just cut his hand open and he'd shoot blood everywhere. That dude was awesome.
Well, he didn't show up into Love Ru.
What? He wasn't a romanceable option?
He was not one of Rito's 300 love interests.
Fucking garbage.
But Eve became Yami, and Tearju just showed up as Tearju, and I think that there were more. But anyway, so as someone who has read as much of To Love Ru as I have, I definitely was I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to like this. I did not expect, however, for me to not like it for the reasons that I ended up not liking it.
Nick, what's not to love? It's about Exorcist. We haven't had an Exorcist manga in Jump in at least 20 to 30 years. It's like that since like, God, has there ever actually been one in Jump?
So in the past couple of days before this chapter dropped, I was actually just going back over like series that had like recently debuted and finished. And I was like, my God, there's so many fucking Exorcist manga that have come out recently in Jump. And also, you know, when you think about it, like the ones that have finished recently too, there's so many of them. And then, of course, there was that one shot, the All Ghoul School. That's about an Exorcist. There's Mitama Security. There's so many freaking Exorcist series. And there's like, here's another one. So,
is there like, does Jump have a contractual requirement to have a series about exorcists and yokai in their magazine at all times?
Some genres just go through periods where they're really popular for a bit, I think. And I do also think that, you know, there might be a thing where like maybe just the current editorial team is really into like exorcists as a thing. They want to like have a really good Exorcist series, so they approve a bunch of things of a particular genre. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what the reasoning is, but yeah, it seems like there's been a lot. So I know that there have been like Exorcist series to some degree, like all through Jump's history, but it just seems particularly when they're specifically just exorcists, as opposed to like a little twist on it, like Spirit Detective or Soul Reaper or whatever, for it to be like, they're exorcists, you know. Although in this case, they're exorcist ninjas. So that's a little bit different, I suppose.
It wouldn't bother me so much if it wasn't that it pressed so much on the yokai thing or the Shinigami, Shikigami kind of thing. Because I'm like, there's been other series, as you mentioned, where they do the Exorcist thing. Like D. Grayman did it, but I don't really recall them ever. Like, they were exorcists in that, but I don't recall them ever actually fighting, like, yokai or things like that. But, I don't know. This is another one where I was just like, all right, let's see if they have anything fresh for this one. And boy, howdy did they.
So, I'm going to go through this very quickly. I'm not going to go through this page by page. I'm just going to explain generally what happens. Kentaro Yabuki draws it, so in general it actually looks pretty good. There's a few shots where it's like, that girl's thighs sure are being focused on a lot. The chapter title basically tells you everyone you need to know. Matsuri, Suzu, and the Ayakashi. And Ayakashi is a type of yokai. In this case, a white cat spirit who looks like Korin from Dragon Ball, basically. He wants to eat this girl named Suzu, but her friend Matsuri is an exorcist ninja and is dealing with that. And so he immediately like beats up this Ayakashi guy. It turns out, we learn through flashbacks and stuff like that, they've been friends for a really long time. Since Suzu was young, she has always had these yokai drawn to her, particularly like weaker spirits would gather around her, and she's like friend to all of them and stuff like that. But we eventually learned that Matsuri had learned from his grandfather, who was like the master of their style or whatever, that she is a bizarre occurrence among humans. She is an Ayakashi medium. She exudes life force that Ayakashi are drawn to, and so he was warned that eventually she would be attacked by a more powerful Ayakashi, and the Ayakashi is in this chapter is Shirogane, whose true form is this giant evil wicked cat that has all of this power and all of these various spells. Matsuri had been warned about this possibility from when he was young, and so he trained really hard to be this ninja so that he could protect her no matter what happened. And so Shirogane takes his true form in front of Suzu, and then Matsuri shows up, and as he shows up, Suzu's like, you should have just told me why you were doing this from the start, Matsuri. You're so stupid. Why did you keep this a secret from me? They have a fight. It's actually pretty cool. in general, pretty good art.
Uh,
And Matsuri had been warned by his grandfather, listen, this was a guy who was once deified as a god. You can't just beat him head on, but you can seal him. And, take this scroll. I've poured my power into it for years. It was meant specifically to be used against him. He'll let his guard down around you because you're young, so you should have an opening. And sure enough, he's able to use it, use a sealing jutsu, and he's being sucked away. And as he's being sucked away, Shirogane sees Suzu and Matsuri getting really close to each other, and he's like, damn it, they're gonna get all cuddly if I'm gone, because he's got this weird like jealousy thing. It's weird. Like he wants to eat her, but it's also sexual. It's weird. So he's like, I won't allow this to happen. I know what I'll do. Secret art. Gender swap awakened. This on Matsuri. And we don't see anything happen, but Shirogane's power is like sucked up into this scroll, and then Shirogane falls to the ground in like his little chubby cat form again. And when the dust clears, Matsuri's got boobs. And his hair is longer, and it changes color in front of our eyes. And they're like, oh my god, Matsuri's a girl now. So we cut ahead to like the next day, I guess, and Shirogane is all upset because of this. But he says, but I've changed that brat into a girl. Now there's no chance that they'll get romantically involved. Serves them right. And then he vows, he's going to return to his normal form and devour Suzu. Then we go over to Matsuri's household. Suzu is helping him get dressed. And we see an immediate cheesecake shot because he's in his underwear. And they're like, you've got to put a sports bra on, and then we'll put your hair up, blah, blah, blah. The grandpa's like, oh, gender swap awakened. A secret art. Even I don't know how to reverse. It's been years since Suzu's come to pick up Matsuri, So they come out. Matsuri's in a schoolgirl uniform, and he's like, I'm going to school. And his grandpa's like, at the moment, there's no choice but to accept this situation. I suppose it all depends on Shirogane's next move. But Matsuri, you just might have to be prepared to abandon being a man. And Suzu is teasing Matsuri because he's cuter than she expected. And Matsuri's like, I'm a guy. So 33 years ago, a series debuted in Weekly Shonen Sunday called Ranma One Half about a somewhat feminine-looking martial artist named Ranma who ended up who on a trip to China ended up falling into the spring of a drowned girl, and it was cursed with something that, when splashed with cold water, he would take the form of a girl, and then when splashed with warm water, he would revert back. It was a whole, gender bender thing. That series had a better idea of how this kind of thing, actually is than this series in 2020, and it kind of pisses me off a lot. Look, gender bender stories, my point in bringing up Rama is they're not new, especially to shonen series, because apparently when a guy turns into a girl, it's funny, because it's just like intrinsically hilarious, I guess. And also, it's an opportunity to be like, oh, look, he's weirded out by his new body, which means that I can draw boobs and butt and stuff while he's weirded out by it. So, look, it's 2020. Like, our understanding of how sex and gender are related has gone forward by that amount of time and has made a lot of progression in the public understanding of it a lot of late. And it annoys me to see just the little things in this that make me realize that there is not going to be any sort of... This is just going to be a series that I think is going to make me angry a lot. But like in a way that just pisses me off because it's going to seem very ignorant. There are definitely stories that I think can be told with this kind of setup regarding gender dysphoria, regarding, the relation between genders, trans issues and stuff like that. Because basically what's going on here is that essentially we've had a character go from being cis male to being trans male. Um, and I think that having that bodily autonomy removed from someone, there are things that you can explore with that. But instead, it's just going to be like, oh, he's a girl now. Funny, funny. And it annoys me when we've got, it's one thing to have Shuriken and I go like, well, they'll never be able to be lovey-dovey now that both of them are girls. It's like, well, I mean, he's the villain. Maybe he's just being an idiot about that. But then you have the grandpa being like, you'll have to give up being a man. It's like, well, I have to give up, on having a penis, maybe, but he's still a guy. He's just got boobs now. So just the little things about that equate one thing with another when it feels like at this point. I mean, look, earlier this week we had the Supreme Court make a ruling that, you can't fire someone for, being LGBT. And now we just like, yeah, but there's still idiots in the world. And there's going to be more idiots in the world because they're going to be young people who are reading this and being like, tee-hee, the guy's got boobs now. He's a girl. So it pisses me off in a way that I have trouble actually being eloquent about. And I've had several days to think about this. So, yeah.
I think you were very elegant about it. Nick, the boobs bounce made me go tee-hee. I'm going to add it to the recap now. At a time. With my second veto in the bank contract.
How many of these did you win?
I had a couple stored around the house.
You hold the ladder match in secret every week after you cash in. It's like, and I've got the news.
But I'm so scared of heights that it still takes me like a couple hours to get up there.
You do the wrestler climb even though you haven't actually been hurt at all. You're just like.
I eventually just take out a broom and I start trying to poke it down off the ceiling. I'm like, get down there, get down there. So basically, yeah, I agree with you on a lot of it. It is unfortunate that Shonen Jump has not had any good representation for a very long time. The closest thing you'd say is like, oh, there's presumably, or at least alluded to, a non-binary character in Dr. Stone, and there's a trans character in One Piece who is like 757th on the billing if you were to like make a billing list of One Piece characters. So it's not like there's a ton of this. So yeah, this definitely is a series that comes in an area that it feels tone deaf. I don't want to immediately be like, well, it's garbage, I hate it. I need to see where it's going because maybe there's something more to this. As I said, maybe the cat's dumb and this could immediately be a story that is about like, yeah, gender identity doesn't have to you don't have to be a cis male and a cis woman to fall in love in the way this stupid ancient cat douchebag thinks you have to.
There's like no time spent on actually talking about how Matsuri and Suzu actually feel about what has happened yet, I will note. Because the gender swap jutsu is performed like 6 pages from the end or something like that. And then after that, the only people's thoughts we get are Shiragane's and Matsuri's grandfather. And we just see what Matsuri and Suzu are doing and not any conversations they've had about this beforehand or anything like that. But there are little signs that really don't give me hope for what's going to happen. The fact that Matsuri is like, well, I guess I have to pass as a girl now, as opposed to like, dude, put on a vest and like cut your hair and, whatever.
Then obviously, you can't make a joke about how fluttery skirts are, Nick.
Yeah. There's that. Look, I'm sure that eventually there's going to come a point where someone's going to do the whole gender bender comedy thing, and then there's going to be like, a guy will stubbornly just be like, I'm just going to keep on living as a guy, and then you'll have it basically be a thing about trans issues. Or you can have someone, the point of it is that they realize like, actually, I kind of like being a girl. Maybe this is how I wanted things to be all along or something like that. My point is that this device that has been around for a long time can be updated to have a modern context to it, and it seems like this is a series from the past instead, and that bugs me.
I will say this series has a very honorable distinction in the same. I don't know why Siri's going nuts. Quiet. In that,
because you said this series.
yeah,
Series.
yeah. This series has a very honorable distinction in that it joins the scissoring chapter of Chainsaw Man of being too hot for the mobile app. So you have to read it online on the website.
It wasn't. I was really worried when I saw that because I was like, "Huh, I don't see that series on my app." And then I looked on the Twitter and it's like, "You have to view it on your browser." I'm like, "Okay." And then I read it and I'm like, "Why?"
Yeah, I was like, there's some stuff there, but not anything worse than what we got out of 90% of the chapters of Food Wars. I mean,
I do wonder actually if it has to do with Shirogane being such an asshole. Honestly, some of the comments that he makes, but I don't know.
I think it's just that it's definitely alluding a lot to her sex. I think it's the shot with the candle seems to be a very suggestive shot that could be misinterpreted.
Also, her helping get Matsuri get dressed, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe, who knows? But hey, we'll have to see if Chapter 2's just as raunchy.
I guess we'll see. Bone Collection!
Bone Collection is ready.
Chapter 7. I want to cut you.
Nick, I know, but what's the chapter about?
Kazami's got a cool sword now. According to Pyra, the sword that he has drawn is the 11th strongest in terms of spiritual energy. This gives me hope that he's going to just hit the top really quickly, and then it's like, well, no, we ran out of strong bones. End of series.
No, Nick, we don't have that much stuff. We still have so much summer left to get through.
No. So they go through the dummies that have been summoned, and they charge into the mansion together. Abe has encountered, what's-his-face, the drunk demon guy. Abe seems to definitely have the upper hand, but then he takes a drink, and he grows in size and power immediately, breaks apart Abe's shield thing, and so Abe's like, oh, wow, that's really scary. If you'd hit me without protection, I wouldn't have stood a chance. And then the devil charges forward, and she's like, oh, oops, I was talking so much, and now I'm in a bind. Yes, that is what happened. Yeah. Just because you're self-aware doesn't mean that it's funny. You have to actually execute in a way that's humorous in order for it to be funny.
No, they did it. They did everything they had to.
Yeah. So then she goes, maybe I'll end it with that spell. But then Pyra and Kazami show up, and Kazami blocks the drill that the guy's got with his sword. They're trying to get Bei-chan to stop and calm down, but apparently drinking alcohol has caused him to go into, quote, drunk berserker mode. Some people are angry drunks, so.
Oh, yeah. My father.
So Pyra's like, the only thing we can do is sober him up. It's going to keep going. Gonna keep going. So Pyra says that they need to hit the sake bag on his back, which is another drill. But yeah, she says it's like a second stomach. If you destroy it, he'll sober up, because that's how alcohol works. Once it's already been distributed throughout the body and has influenced the brain, if you just rip out someone's stomach, then they'll be fine. So Abe takes her muscle form again and tries to punch through the drill, and it doesn't work. Kazami tries to slice through the drill, and it doesn't work. So then they're just running away, and in a very, very dumb-looking picture, they're running away. And then Pyra's trying to explain, like, listen, the sword's attack power comes from when it's swung. And Kazami's like, well, it's really hard for me to do that right now, though. So Abe's like, listen, I'll stop his movements. And Kazami, you move into a higher position. And then Pyra's like, well, what about me? And Abe's like, you're the bait. And she just shoves her into the path of the drill, and it starts boring into her stomach while Pyra goes, but she's fine because her bones are hard. But guess what? Her Sailor Fuku's not super strong, so oh no, her boobs get out. They're in a bra now.
Her bra is indestructible, though, as evidenced by the fact that it is pristine. Not a scratch on it.
Not a single scuff in any of the lacing or ribbon or.
It's such a frilly thing. You think it would have been torn slightly, but nope, it is perfect. Thus, making the exact confirmation we finally needed to know that her bra is made out of her bones.
Presumably.
Yep.
I mean, yeah. So Abe hauls Kazami up to a higher level, and Pyra starts talking to Bei about stuff and giving a friendship speech. Abe throws out some seals in order to halt Bei's movements, and then Kazami comes slashing down, cuts through the sake sack or whatever, and Bei falls to the ground. And they're like, all right, good job. And everyone, collapses and is happy and stuff. Pyra's like, Bei's looking more human since the last time I saw him. And Kazami's like, staring at her boobs. And then Pyra's like, how dare you? And kicks him in the head. Bei wakes up, identifies Pyra, and then he looks over at Abe and is like, it's a Lolita hag. And I think she beats him up because there are boom and slam and crack sound effects on the outside of the mansion. So that was the chapter this week. It was worse than the last couple of weeks of Bone Collection. This was dumb and stupid and had terrible artwork and really weird fan service and all the characters being dicks, as we're used to. So there you go.
All right, let's go talk about a good chapter now.
Good chapter now. It's a Mashle.
Cream puffs.
Why I forgot that was your thing. So, it's the first chapter of Mashle that doesn't have Mash's name in the chapter title, because it's not a Mash chapter. Chapter 19, Lance Crown and the Shuriken Thrower. So Mash is hanging out in the owl barn. Lance is there to keep an eye on him. But then someone declares Seafield, and a pool of water immediately emerges underneath Mash's feet. He falls into it. He doesn't seem all that worried at first, as he's just kind of going, hands above the water. Those two Langdorm people that we saw before, the big creepy guy and the guy who made obvious statements, have shown up. It seems that the big creepy guy has water powers.
I forgot what he does.
And the obvious statements guy is throwing big old shuriken around, similar to the one that he was carrying around with him. Makes sense. So the two of them square off as the two Magia Lupus mages introduce themselves as the group's 6th and 7th Fangs, and they say, we're going to fight for each other's coin. Mash is in trouble because despite being made of fitness, he can't swim, apparently. So, the 6th Fang, the big creepy guy, says, well, then allow me to assist you, as Mash sinks all the way into the pool of water. He transforms into a shark and jumps into the pool after Mash.
Just say that sentence again. He turns into a shark and jumps in after Mash. This is the coolest fucking series to jump. This is like I'm that meme where it's like the guy who's looking over his shoulder, and it's like me hand in hand with One Piece, but I'm looking over the shoulder at Mashle, because Mashle's just been so much cooler recently. I'm like, this is the best series, jump!
So that leaves Lance with Shuriken Guy, the 7th Fang, and Shuriken Guy says, let me tell you something important. And Lance is like, what? And he says, in a fight, there is always a winner and a loser. And Lance says, thinks to himself, damn him. He broke my concentration by stating the obvious like it was an earth-shattering revelation.
I don't know. Women's championship at Backlash ended a double count out, so.
So they. Brief wrestling tangent. So.
I don't think we're allowed to do this on this show.
So apparently Paul Heyman lost his head of creative Raw job because Vince decided to do that. And then shortly after that broke and Backlash went on, afterwards people were like, yeah, the Drew McIntyre Bobby Lashley match was mostly laid out by Paul Heyman, and the ending was decided by Vince. And then you look around everywhere, and it's like, man, that match was great until the ending. So it's like, God, what the fuck is this? We live in this world where this fucking guy just... All right. And he pays people to make his company essential business.
But Akira Tozawa has ninjas now, Nick. You get it? Because he's Asian.
At least he's actually the right nationality, but still. So, all right. So, Lance reacts to the shurikens as like, hey, I can use my gravity magic to just, stop these giant discs. I'll be fine. But then he looks around, and there are owls that are right next to the seventh fang. And he's like, oh no, the owls are next to him. No, no, no. I've got to use my gravity magic and crush them. But then he gets an image of his little sister in his head going, don't you pick on those owls! He's like, you're right, Anna. Your big brother was wrong. So the seventh fang is like, did you know in this world there is only the strong and the weak? It's so stupid. So he starts to use more of his power, which means throwing more shurikens.
Now, if I learned anything from reading Naruto and following Tenten, this can only work for a benefit. And then I think that scene ends with a like a cut forward in time, and she's been defeated on a field of all of her missed shurikens. Like, holy shit, you can put so much care into every character during this arc, except Tenten. You clearly gave zero shits about her.
Didn't even see the fight. Like, the one fight we don't see in that entire sequence. But it actually turns out that Lance allows the shurikens to hit him because, oh no, there are owls behind me too! So he's just taking the blows. The seventh fang mocks him by identifying him as, the child of the Crown family, and he knows his history and stuff. And he says, I can't believe you turned out to be so weak. Did you leave because you were a failure? I pity you. Did you know? Crushing those weaker than you is the best feeling in the world. And he goes on to say, you exist to prove that we're your betters. But Lance uses his gravity magic finally, but nothing seems to happen. And so the seventh thing is like, poor thing, time to end this. And he launches out 3 shurikens! So he gets ready to, strike the final blow, but then he's like, wait a minute. The owls are over there now. And Lance uses his gravity magic and crushes all of the shurikens immediately. And he says, the owls were in the way, so I moved them. And the seventh thing realizes, wait, so with the last spell, he used the shovel to break the feed bags. The reason he wasn't fighting back was because of the owls? So he launches a really big shuriken! And he's like, this is my most powerful... immediately defeated. And he's crushed along with it. And he's like, how can this be? We're both double line magic users. How is he so much stronger? And Lance says, you fight to prove you're better than others, but I'm different. I have to fight for the sake of my sister. Let me tell you something important. A selfish bully like you never stood a chance against someone fighting to save his sister. So, this was a fun chapter. In terms of Mashle, I think it's one of my less preferred chapters, but I don't think there's been a bad chapter of Mashle yet, so it's still pretty good. I think it just goes to show like how much we kind of depend on Mash to actually deliver the really funny stuff, and Lance isn't that type of character, so there's less of a surprise whenever he does something like use really powerful gravity magic. So. But it was a unique situation that he found himself in. I did like that, there was humor derived from putting a serious character in a bizarre situation and just seeing him react to it.
Yeah, it was a very, very good chapter.
All right. So, Mission Yozakura Family.
Pew pew, I'm boring.
Mission 39, The Aquarium Trap. So, Chris, I have mixed thoughts about this chapter.
Is it that it's boring and it's very boring? Are those the two mixtures you're dealing with? That it both sucks and blows at the same time? Like some kind of defiance of physics?
I thought that this would have unequivocally been a better than average chapter of this series, if not for the fact that the stupid fucking annoying spy introduced in the last chapter is all the fuck over it. It's just kind of like there's this better chapter creeping around from the wrapping that he puts around it. So, like the first page of this chapter where you don't know that he's going to show up, it seems like, oh, this might be fun. Look, Mutsumi's hanging out with this beluga, and the beluga's mimicking all of her movements. How charming and cute. And then he shows up immediately and is like, I can't believe these two are on a date. How dare they be WW? I want to be the main character. So he's just stalking them as they're on this aquarium date. As Mutsumi's going around, she's got this shark mascot hat on, and she's enjoying her day going out with her husband, and Tayo's like, I've got to guard her and stuff. And she's going and enjoying herself, checking out all these different, sea, aquarium mascots and sea creatures in their tanks and stuff like that. Well, this one asshole just keeps on going around like, I'll ruin their dates. I'll ruin them.
I hope that's his voice when this inevitably gets a fucking anime, because it won't die.
I should note that apparently, according to sales figures, like both Mashle and Undead Unluck are actually outselling Mission Yozakura family at this point. There was like a statement made on like the Mashle official Twitter saying like there being reports about a bunch of stores actually like selling out of the first volume. So that seems like a good sign for a series that we really enjoy and one that we dropped. And might be bad news for a series that has kind of like passed us by. So
well, there's Yuna of the Hot Springs just ended. Promised Neverland just ended. So there's two more series.
Slayer, so.
Yeah, so there's two more series. I think that will probably be gone in this run. I think there's 2 spots left. I don't think Mission Yozakura family is going to be one of them.
I don't think so.
It seems far more likely that it's probably going to be like a Gravity Boys or something like that.
A series that's younger and hasn't, anyway. Also, like, Mitama Security has been running as long as Mission Yozakura.
Guardian of the Witch. Sorry, that's the one that's absolutely going.
Yeah. And Mitama Security has been around for about as long as Mission Yozakura family, and it's selling like way worse. So, well, I guess we'll see. There eventually reaches like a cute moment where they go to see a dolphin show, and Tayo has managed to communicate with the spy trained dolphins that are in the tank, because that's the thing that exists in this world, and he gets them to like spell out this message declaring his love for Mutsumi, and he like gets down on one knee in front of her and is like, hey, I keep on making mistakes around you, but would it be okay if I stayed by your side anyway? And she's all embarrassed and pleased by it and stuff. And everybody claps. And then loser spy gets his comeuppance, and that's it. So.
Yep. A chapter.
Yes.
I agree. The first page is very cute. It's a shame that there was 18 pages that had to follow it.
What if we just judged everything by its cover, Chris? Maybe that would...
That would be a great way to do it, honestly. I think that's what we need to start doing in the future.
Right, so let's review this chapter of Time Paradox Ghostwriter. Everyone's upset.
Your plagiarism's ready.
Everyone's upset that Teppei has torn up the manuscript and they're shocked by it. Anyway, moving on.
I think this is okay. I feel like it doesn't tell enough of the story. I kind of wish we had gotten more, like another.
Let's really move on from last week.
I wish we had gotten like another 18 pages or so, but for what we got, I'm pretty happy with it. Next week, I'm like, I don't know how we got to this point. Didn't he have to finish that manga?
So, Teppei he confirms what we suspected last week, which is that he recognizes that Aino hesitated before she said, oh yeah, the chapter's perfect. And she realizes like, no, it's a lie. Because there's no way that someone as genius as her would call this perfect. She would never call this art perfect. And he grabs her by the shoulders even and says, hey, be honest with me. This isn't good enough, right? And he starts to say out loud, I've got a responsibility. But he, of course, can't tell her that. So he just thinks to himself while he's like looking in like panic and desperation into her eyes, like, I'm responsible for the story you're supposed to draw in the future. Because I already started today. So I'm responsible because I stole the real thing from this world. And so he says, tell me the truth. I trust in your sensibility, so be brutally honest. So Aino kind of recovers and she puts on this smile. She's like, oh, was it that obvious? I guess I'm a pretty bad liar. But yeah, I mean, I think that you and I actually really are alike then, that, you recognize that. So the Teppei's editor shows up and he's got takoyaki for everyone from a store apparently called It's a Takoyaki, which is kind of weird, but okay. So he's like, hey guys, yeah, I heard that you were going to finish up the character art. I was kind of terrified when you decided to redraw the entire thing, but I'm glad we're still on schedule. Where's the finished art? And it's over and over to a pile. It's like, what happened? So, yeah, editor feels. So Teppei, of course, is demanding, like, let me redraw it again, and he apologizes, and he's like, listen, it's missing something. I can't give White Knight to the readers yet. So Zeder says, all right, you can redraw it, but if you haven't redrawn it by morning, by 6 in the morning, you have to figure out what you think is missing, or else the draft that you did before, the first draft you did before you did this set of redraws, this one that you're the least happy with, I'm going to send that to the printer if you don't figure it out by the morning. So, I mean, that's a pretty good, approach. Like, listen, I know you're not satisfied with it, but we're going to have this backup plan. And I do appreciate the realistic but accommodating approach he takes to that. Mm-hmm. So Teppei asks everyone to go home because he can't allow them to see the actual volume of the manga. And so he's like, this is my last resort. I'm going to photocopy the real thing and trace it. I didn't want to do this, but my feelings don't matter. The readers need to see White Knight as close to the real thing as possible. It gets to be 3 in the morning, or maybe 3 in the afternoon. I don't know. Yeah, it's 3 in the morning because it's dark outside. So, but he looks over his work and he's like, "It's no, I can't even I can't recreate even when I'm tracing it. There's no soul to the characters now. It's just a fake. What should I do?" Doorbell rings unexpectedly. Aino shows up, and Debbie's like, "What are you doing here?" And Aino says, "I need to tell you something. You're a bird!" And she flaps her hands. So apparently she just actually is Nizuma from Bakuman if she's doing this. So
it reminded me of my high school Spanish teacher, because she would very frequently always, because we were terrible students, of course we were. So we would constantly get something wrong, and she'd just be like, "Are you a turtle?" And everyone would be like, what the hell is she talking about? And she would usually eventually get to that point where she'd be like, "You're so slow at getting to this," or "You hide inside." But it would always start with that, like, "Are you a something?" So it'd be like, "Are you a crab?" And you just have to sit there like, I don't know where this is going. Yes? You just have to sit there.
My Spanish teacher in high school was one of my Spanish teachers rather in high school was the same way. She was just like, it was, her mind just worked in weird ways.
Yeah.
So maybe we had the same teacher, Chris. She would just jump back and forth between our states.
Oh man. I wish I could remember her name, but the only thing I remember from 4 years of Spanish lessons was Sacapuntas, so.
It was really weird when she made that comparison. Are you a pencil sharpener?
Yes. I think I see where this is going. We need to sharpen our senses. She's like, "No, the pencil sharpener exploded. Fix it."
Use your teeth to sharpen the class's pencils.
Okay. A lot of lead getting in my mouth. Don't think that's safe.
So, anyway, in manga world, Aino's just declared Teppei to be a bird, and he's confused by this, so she says, "You're a bird, flying freely through the vast open sky, tied down to nothing." Anyway, good luck, bye! just came over just to tell him this. So, Teppei calls out to her, and he's, desperate at this point. He's like, tell me what this version of White Knight is missing. And Aino turns to him and says, "Why would you ask me?" And Teppei tries to cover up for what he's just said, but he's like, "Well, you were drawing White Knight by coincidence, and the storyboards you showed me were good. Your finished art is amazing, and I also think of us as two of a kind." So he covers up, and she says, "Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you say that, but I don't have the answer for you. This is your White Knight. At first, I was drawing the same thing, so I figured I could be your assistant and give you advice, but the thing is, it was seeing how deadly serious sure about White Knight, and it made me come to my senses, and it made me realize that this is your story. Of course it is. So don't worry about what I say. You are too worried. So I appreciate it, but you should draw White Knight the way you think is right, and that's how you manage to draw manga that suits you, just like you did with the one shot.
Nope, getting a little bit of hiccup there.
Oh, sorry. Well, Teppei has a revelation when Aino tells him, you need to draw manga that suits you like you did with the one shot. And Teppei realizes what made the one shot good. And so he gives himself a big double-handed slap on the cheeks. Thanks, Aino, for the advice. And he's like, all right, I'll try doing it my way. And Aino's like, all right, I'm going to bed. So Teppei, gets back to work, and he's like, my White Knight, it's not anywhere near that simple, but she helped me realize something. I've been trying to model this after the original, trying to recreate it perfectly, but that's just going to make this look like a counterfeit. I'm not Itsuki Aino, I'm Teppei Sasaki. So if I'm going to keep drawing this manga, I have to do it with my art, and I have to draw my take on it. And so 9 days later, when the deadline comes, they submit the completed chapter, and they've managed to get it done. And his editor is incredibly pleased with it. It brings him to tears. And he says, when you were doing that first version and the second version, it was effective and it had a nice change of pace, but I like this way better. It feels like the characters have blood in their veins. So, good job. And Teppei apologizes to all of his assistants for putting them through all the shit that they have. Aino's like, it's good, but it's not as good as my true level. And, she kind of pisses off the, young hot blood assistant and stuff. And then Teppei's like, hey, by the way, do you mind if I ask your opinion on this? And Aino says, well, it's far from perfect, but I think it's really great. This is awesome. And so they, celebrate together, and she and the young assistant start to squabble, and that's the end of the chapter. So, yeah, it turns out, Chris, that if you want to be an artist, you shouldn't just, copy someone else. You can learn a lot from other people's artwork, but yeah, in order to actually draw your own manga, you need to draw your own manga. So.
Oh, but it's still cool to steal things, right?
Still cool to steal things. Okay. Yep.
All right, cool. I've liberally lifted my entire image of myself from various pulp culture relics of the early 2000s. So if I were to lose those, I think I would melt away into like a ghost on the wall.
It's still it's really weird because I'm starting to get the impression that the issue is less that Teppei has actually stolen the series and more how that is actually going to affect him, and we're going to have to just kind of leave the point that he did steal it and have him actually have to confront that at a later point. It doesn't seem like it's going to actually happen anytime soon. It's just going to be things related to that he's going to have to deal with for a little while. But we'll see how this goes.
This was the chapter that made me realize I must have made a mistake when the first chapter came around. I thought the thing was that the microwave sends out a copy of Jump, he reads it, and then it vanishes afterwards.
Because they never really addressed how it came back. So.
I guess he just misplaced it, because every other one's been still around. So
I don't know, man.
All right, well, that's that one. All right, let's talk then, Nick, about We Never Learn. Question 162. Hubba Hubba. Question 162. A pizza bet equals Sleeping Beauty of the Literary Forest, Part 3. So I'm going to zoom through this one because, to be honest, this one could be summed up very quickly. It's right around Valentine's Day. The girls decide they're going to make chocolates. So they're going to do it at Femino's house because she's injured. And I guess this is where a branching off point in the timelines is as well, because she's injured. All this stuff is then going to happen. But Femino's sort of like, she comes home, Yuega's there. She's like, you can't be here. A bunch of girls are coming. She can't say that part out loud, that the girls who are coming have crushes on you. So if you're here, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and she can't cover up Yuiga being there by being like, yeah, he's occasionally been coming by to help me out with stuff. Because he doesn't want them to know that he's just been like her live-in servant practically for the past couple of weeks. Yeah. This could be resolved very easily, but if we did that, then we wouldn't have really weird intimacy fan service.
So we get this whole chapter. The girls show up. She's like, Fumina's like, I have to hide Yuega. Hides her underneath the kosetsu, or what do they call it? The I forget the name
Kotatsu.
of it. Kotatsu. Hide her under the kotatsu. Hide him under the kotatsu. And she's like, you just stay here, and then we'll sneak you out. But then, of course, all the other girls show up, and they're like, hey, cool, this is a great place to do it. Let's start making chocolate. And, like, their toes and stuff are getting all over Yuega. And he has to get really, really close to Fumino. He has to basically hug her and not say anything at all. And there is the most adorable moment of maybe the entire series, where Yuega has been thrust into this situation by Fumino. It is entirely the onus on her, but he's hiding underneath this table, and he's like, is this what they call a girl party? I'll just cover my ears until it's over so you can enjoy yourself. And it's like, there's no world that is good enough for this poor kid who just is always giving it his best. So
I forget when it was that Yuiga was like in the bed with Ogata, and they were trying to hide the fact that they were in the bed together while someone else was like in the room to talk with them. I forget if that happened after the branching off point or not. But like, if that had happened if this has happened previously in this same timeline, and then it's just like, come on, everyone's used to finding you in embarrassing situations.
It's very common. By the nature of this series, it happens at least once a week. So the girls start talking about how they're going to give their chocolate to somebody who they like. Uruka specifically saying that she is going to give her chocolate to somebody she really loves because she made that promise to do it as soon as exams were over. So there's a little bit of nervousness on Fumino's part because she's like, oh, they really, they have these feelings for him. It hurts. So they leave. Yuega apparently did have to stay underneath the kotatsu the entire time they made fucking chocolate, because he's just sitting there drinking water afterwards because he's been dehydrated, and I assume covering his ears for hours. But Fumino was apologizing, and he's like, hey, it's okay. It's my fault. I'm the one who put a damper on your girl party. I didn't mean to listen to anything. And Fumino just says, yeah, it's even though I knew this was coming, it just drives it home. And that the special time we have between us will be over. And she tucks her chocolates away. She's not going to give it to him. So this chapter has a different feeling. So if this was We Never Learn, the regular running series, I would be very annoyed, because this is the quintessential Fumino storyline that has been her character arc since like chapter 40 or whenever they first developed that. She wants to be in love with Yuega, but she supports her friends and she can't let herself do it. So this chapter does hit differently when we kind of know that within 6 chapters or so, she's going to finally get with Yuega. So I don't mind it here, but it is a weird moment where you're just like, this would be a garbage chapter in regular We Never Learn. And it feels like a regular We Never Learn chapter, but in this alt route thing, it's kind of interesting to get this context, I guess, hopefully one last time before we move on there. I'm kind of curious to find out what's going to be the catalyst. And I wonder if maybe it's the fact that Haruko said that she's going to confess after exams.
The most interesting aspect of this chapter to me is just kind of in seeing where the changes happened. The changes in Ogato basically were just like, yeah, so I got close to Yuiga, so Haruka didn't confess. But this one seems to be much more like kind of sewed into the fabric of the months leading up to the exams and stuff. And we're seeing little differences happen here and there, and how one change at the beginning of it has kind of led to different changes along the way, which is more interesting to me than just being like, we're months in the future and Haruka didn't confess, therefore Ogata has a shot now. And that was basically it. Beyond that, this is probably the least interesting chapter of this arc to this point, I think. I didn't like that we just had, like another, oh no, I better hide the fact that this is happening so that there's not a weird misunderstanding, because we've seen a million of those and we never learned by this point. Nothing really is going on, and that's about it. So,
Yep. All right.
Chris, Dr. Stone!
Time to get stoned!
Z equals 154. Spy versus Spy. As we go back and get out our old issues of Mad Magazine, and look, Spy versus Spy. Ooh, that one blew that one up. Yay.
This is very hilarious. Now time to read about the weekly Pimple Popper report and celebrity names that have been made to be insults. This is top tier content.
Never read Mad Magazine. So.
My brother was a huge fan of it and Cracked back in the day, so I saw a lot of it. He used to actually have, and that's why I referenced it, a poster. There was a video, like a poster of a guy popping a pimple and his entire body shot out of it, basically. And I remember I was like, this is the grossest thing in the world. I was like, this is revolting.
Powerful stuff.
Yep.
All right, so both of the two science kingdoms are on the move now. Senku has sent out, Tsukasa's, little elite squad, and Zeno has sent out Stan to assassinate Dr. Taiju. Meanwhile, Tsukasa's group is going to try and capture Zeno. And we're introduced to some more members of this American Kingdom of Science. So we have two dudes who are just kind of like goons, basically. There's one guy who looks like a pirate.
Yep.
And then there's one guy with a long nose and glasses who looks like a dork, and they're both in love with the other new character introduced in this chapter, Luna, who is so thick. I know that there are definitely women who are shaped this way. I'm not surprised by that. I've just never seen one drawn this way in a manga that we've read, so it kind of took me off guard. She is thicker than the bottom of a bottle of Elmer's glue. Like, Jesus Christ.
Was that like something JR used to say?
No,
well, that's thicker than a bottle of Elmer's glue.
I was trying to think of one I was trying to think of a metaphor that A, I'd never heard before, and B, didn't actually sound sexual. But then again, I've heard girls call it thicker than a bowl full of oatmeal, and I don't know how that's supposed to be sexual. So anyway.
Oh no, Nick, oatmeal is the sexiest of breakfast foods. You think about it, it's all lumpy and bland.
So she has hips, is my point. And the Boichi will not let you forget about it. I'll just put it that way. Anyway, so she is going along with Stan while the other two goons carry just equipment and basically a bunch of water. And she's going along with Stan, and Stan's like, yeah, that heavy stuff could leave marks on your body, and you've got a job to do. And the job involves the dress that she's wearing, which has these broad stripes on it going horizontally. And we cut briefly over to the Perseus, and Ryusuke's like, there's stagnant air. My captain instincts say that's a bad omen. And when we cut back over to Stan's group, they're up in a tree, high up in a tree. And they're spying on the Perseus. And so Stan's taking out a bunch of different instruments and stuff and taking measurements, measuring the humidity, measuring the wind and stuff like that. And so people are asking, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing all this? And he just says simply, it all affects bullet velocity. And he takes out and assembles a sniper rifle. And they're like, what, from this far away? He's like, yeah, I'm going to snipe the enemy science leader with a rifle made by Xeno Science. And we get a fucking awesome 2-page spread to show how fucking long and badass this sniper rifle he's got is, as he's perched up in this tree and is taking sight at Taiju, who happens to be right next to Senku. So he says this is optimal firing position, and Luna asks, are we really going to kill them? And he's like, well, just their science leader. And she hesitates and questions this, and she's like, oh, no, I'm just kidding, just making sure that these two wimps over here aren't going to chicken out. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're so cool, Ms. Luna. But then she says, well, you mentioned you had a job for me to do. And he explains, yeah, each of the stripes on your dress is 5 inches. You're my yardstick. By matching it with my crosshairs, I can calculate the distance to the target. He's like, oh, Awesome. Uh, and so he's like, you're about their age, Luna, so they're less likely to see you as a threat. Board their ship, find Dr. Taiju, lure him onto the deck for 3 seconds, give me a sign that he's the guy. One shot will end this. And we get this visual of someone exploding next to Luna. I should point out the bullets that they are going to fire from this thing are like half a foot long.
Yeah.
So this is a sniper cannon, basically. So Luna gets set. She approaches the Perseus. As she's about to come around from behind the bushes, she smears a bunch of plants onto her body, and she's like, "I'm the smoothest operator. I'm Luna, the capable gal." And she rushes out, huffing and panting, acting all desperate and stuff. And Stan thinks to himself as he's watching from afar, I know the kind of people that they are. They're still staying put here because they're reluctant to abandon an ally. These kids are so naive. Softies like that won't ignore a girl calling for help. You said to spy? Well, here's our counter-op. Two can play this game. And Luna calls out, help me, I'm desperate to run away from the horrid Dr. Zeno. And we see, a bunch of people reacting to this on the Perseus. Like Moses is like, oh, she's cute. Because, one-track mind and stuff. Ryusui is thinking like, I do want to help her, but we can't take her at face value. But without an ounce of hesitation, Senku goes down the ramp onto the shore and reaches out to her and says, are you hurt? Come onto our ship. There's no need to fear. You're safe now. And Luna's taken aback by this, and she blushes a bit. And Taiju's like, hey, come on, we'll give you first aid and stuff. Yeah. And everyone's like, why is Senku turning on the charm here? And of course, why is Senku turning on the charm? It's because he has a plan!
It's all part of his machinations.
So, we do briefly see Tsukasa's group talking amongst themselves, trying to get information, gather information and stuff. Then we come back to the Perseus again, and people are all talking amongst themselves like, why are we letting this suspicious girl on the ship? Moses is like, she's cute. Yo is like, well, Senku's a man. Maybe, doe-eyed blondes just push all the right buttons for him. And Yuzuri is like, no, you guys, that's, again, you don't know Senku. So, and as Senku is walking, and leading Luna onto the ship, he's just thinking to himself, we'll extract all the info we can out of this girl and send a coded message. He's, immediately gone into full hunched over evil scientist mode. And yeah, so... yeah, I really like this chapter because, like, hey, there's this very dangerous setup, and Senku's just like, okay, come on, info girl. So, yeah.
I do like also, it's one of the few pieces of science I really enjoyed. Just, like, he gets up there and you're, like, taking temperature and all these stuff. Like, what are you doing, you big nerd? He's like, all of this is vital to being able to make a shot at this
guy.
Like, it was always something I remember hearing when I talked to Randy all the time, where he'd always mention, he was like, yeah, when I was a sniper, you have to take into account the curvature of the earth. You actually have to be, like, absurdly good at math to be a sniper. You're like, oh, uh-oh. That's I just assumed I was bad at Call of Duty because I suck, but apparently it's because I'm dumb as well.
Yeah, don't you just put the crosshairs on their head and boop?
Yeah, you just point it over and then boop. That's what those mobile game ads seem to suggest.
I remember seeing like having to answer a physics question once, which was like, you're trying to shoot a monkey, and at the exact moment that you fire, the monkey falls out of the tree. Where should you be aiming in order to hit the monkey? And it's like, you need to be aiming exactly at the monkey because gravity affects the bullet and the monkey the same way. And we actually set up this like whole thing in the classroom where she like, had like a little catapult it was like a little air cannon for like a ping pong ball. And she had this rig set up so that it would simultaneously demagnetize a target and drop it from the ceiling at the same time the ping pong ball got fired. And it's like, yeah, I mean, because you have that whole thing where it's like on the moon, the feather and the brick fall at the same rate and stuff like that. But it's still kind of weird to get in your head, like the way that gravity actually does affect everything. Mm-hmm. All right. Anyway. So. Good chapter. Yep. Chainsaw Man. Chapter 73. Everyday life, no more. Last time Aki had gone to, what's his face? the old agent whose name I forget, Kishibe, there's his name, and told him, hey, can we just take the team off of this mission to go after the Gun Devil? And so we are in the apartment now at this point. All three of them are like gathered up in bed together along with Meowie. And Aki's just says to Power, hey, you stopped screaming last night. And Power says, looking back on it, I may have defeated the Darkness Devil. Yeah, that's what happened.
I love it. Sure.
So, they're like doing dishes later, and Aki says to Denji, hey, are you going to be okay to look after Power on your own when I go to work? And Denji's like, yeah, we'll be fine. And they're like, all right, everything's good now. But Aki gets a call. Apparently all three of them have been called into headquarters, and they're meeting Makima. And Makima says, I'm sorry for calling you out of the blue, but I heard from Captain Kishibe, and so Hayakawa, as you requested, Division 4, you can withdraw from the expedition to eliminate the Gun Devil. But Denji and Power will be going on the operation. So Makima's the villain.
Oh, that's been evident.
I think that if there were ever any doubt, then this outright, no, you can't, is like the most straightforward, I don't care about them, because all I care about is what they can get me, the villain. So Aki asks, what do you mean by that? And she just clarifies, they're under my supervision, and I'd like to show more people how, their capabilities in order to legitimize your division. So I'm going to have them join Devil Extermination Division 7 to carry out the operation. And, operation members need to be briefed on related classified material, so if you're sitting it out, you have to leave. And so Aki gets really tense for a moment, but Denji's just like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Yeah, I've got plans. I've been waiting for this. And Power's like, and Denji's my buddy, so I'm going too. And of course, they don't know what the fuck Aki did to try and keep them out of danger. So he just says, Miss Makima, may I join the operation too? So every time he tries to get out, they pull him back in.
You have to feel bad. This poor guy just cannot catch a fucking break.
I wish we could go back to like chapter 3 when he was just being a dick to Denji and you could kind of dislike him.
Yeah, you're just like, this guy sucks. I'm never gonna like you. You're like, oh my god, when will this sadness Conga end?
And Makima immediately is like, of course you may. They'll need a guardian. So, and then she assures him like, Denji doesn't die. Power is quite sturdy. So you just need to worry about yourself. It's like, oh god. So then she says, all right, well, if all three are on the operation, then I'll tell you what we know regarding the Gun Devil's current status. The information I'm going to disclose can't leave this room. The Gun Devil's already been defeated and confined. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? So she says, when the Soviet army sighted the Gun Devil for the first time, it had already been taken down by someone else and was in an unconscious state. 20% of the Gun Devil's body is possessed by America, 28% by the Soviets, 11% by China, 4% by other countries. The remaining 37% is held by devils around the world as flesh pieces. And Aki is immediately like, but that's impossible. What about the guns that killed Himeno and Kurose and all the others? And Makima's like, those were made by man. And Aki's like, but gun manufacturing is strictly controlled by international law. And Makima's like, well, yeah, but every country regulates guns in secret in their own, so although it seems that the people trafficking guns are claiming they obtained them in contracts with the Gun Devil to cover up the truth. And Aki's like, well, that just sounds like a conspiracy theory. And Maki was like, I mean, it's the government. So as all sorts of governments funneled arms to areas in conflict even before the Gun Devil. And Aki's like, well, then the fear of guns will only keep rising. And of course, the Gun Devil will only get stronger. And she says, well, yes, as it should. And then the nations in possession of more of the Gun Devil's body will have the upper hand against other nations. So, of course, it only makes sense that they would want that to happen. So Aki says, all right, well, then, if we're going on an expedition to eliminate the Gun Devil, does that mean? And Magma says, it will be a kind of war.
Uh-oh.
So after the meeting, They're hanging out outside, and Aki is just, collapsed in like God damn it mode on the bench. And they're like, "What? Why are you so down? I mean, we just need to go kill it and go home, right?" And he says, "Well, if we kill it, then the body will be collected by public safety and kept by the government. We aren't going on a mission to kill the gun devil. We're going on a mission to take the gun devil from another country for Japan's possession." And then he's like, "What does that mean?" And Aki says, "The gun devil can never be killed. It will live forever, always being used by one group or another." And Denji starts to get it. And he's like, "Well, that can't be right. I mean, but..." He's like, "Well, I made a promise with Makima, and she told me she'd grant me any one wish if I killed a gun devil."
That doesn't make sense.
Aki starts to get a headache, and he has a vision. And he gets freaked out and doesn't really tell Denji and Power what's happened. But that night, after they've gone to bed, Aki's sitting up in his own bed by himself, and he calls out, "Future Devil, show yourself." And the Future Devil shows up, and he's like, "I come out when you say the future rules!"
I fucking love that the Future Devil's got like this stupid gimmick.
Aki's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And the Future Devil just goes,
He's like, "No." He's just like, like, why is the Future Devil such a cock?
So he asks, "What was that you showed me this afternoon?" And he's like, "That was a future soon to come, a future absolutely unavoidable. You and Power will be slaughtered by Denji, and after that, the devil that devils fear most shall appear." Fuck! So, this had a bit of a social commentary in it, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of always been a little bit there. We get it a lot more emphasized here. And, oh boy, you really, like, just the brutality to what Aki has to deal with, where he's like, "I thought I had spared my friends. Now they have to go on this mission. I have to go too. And we're never going to get vengeance for my family because they're just going to take the gun devil and always use him. I will never get the satisfaction of knowing the gun devil's dead."
And Denji's never gonna get to have Makima be his girlfriend because
I don't know.
He never intended to have to do that.
I don't know if Aki's thinking that, but yeah, it's a very brutal collage, and I mean, it's weird because I've been kind of trained that when these big things come up, these big like predictions or something like that, you always kind of take it with a grain of salt, like, oh, is that really gonna happen? Or because a lot of Jump tends to be about like free will versus fate, like that sort of thing. Like, is it destined to happen? Okay, change it. But with Chainsaw Man, I really wouldn't be surprised if Denji just straight up kills the other two main characters and kills them. Like, it wouldn't be unthinkable.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what happens when you have a series where it actually, shows you that, hey, characters can die, and even if they don't die, they can get fucked up because, look at what Aki's been through. He's, shortened his lifespan as much as he has. He's lost an arm. And then we've got, like, characters that we actually did have a little bit of time to get to know, like Beam and the Violence Devil. They just got fucking massacred. And meanwhile, Makima is this incredibly powerful puppet master who apparently made this promise to Denji, never intending to give them the opportunity to live up to his side of the deal, so that she would never have to do anything for him because she just has him on a fucking leash. So,
Okay.
All right, The Promised Neverland.
It's all over, Nick.
It's the 181st chapter, final chapter, Beyond Destiny. Hang on, I need to do that like Yami Yugi. Beyond Destiny!
Bow,
So-
bow, 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 bow,
And now I'll reflect your infinite attack back and forth.
bow. Wait, what? The music's like, huh?
This is a power beyond infinity! So, we get this 2-page spread. Emma and all of her friends hanging out on the beach. Look at how happy they look. Aw.
Uh-huh.
I wish the Promised Neverland had been as good as the color pages it's gotten for the
I was
past.
gonna say you could say a lot of things about Promised Neverland, but its color pages are always phenomenal.
So, 2 years have passed since the last chapter when Emma arrived on Earth and didn't have her fucking memories of her family, or apparently of anything that she had been through. I guess she doesn't remember anything about what happened to her life. And we get narration saying, we've been looking for her, but we've made no progress. And so eventually, as they're having a meeting, like, how are we going to find her? Gilda says, what about forbidden zones? Like when Norman asked us to search for Sanju Mujika. Maybe there are places like that here too, areas where we can't go or aren't allowed in. And Norman's like, a country that doesn't exist anymore. Regions and countries that are destroyed by war or disasters, places where people won't be living because they don't exist in 2049. So more searching, montage. Of course, we saw at the end of the last chapter that, like, there was that, American Tail thing where Emma and Ray were like going in different directions along the street and they just missed each other. So yeah, we know that they arrived in the right area. Eventually, they get to that location and Ray's looking around and he's like, okay, I guess we'll go home and then meet up with Norman's group. Wait a minute. My baby memories are telling me that people who are dead want me to turn this way.
Wait a minute. I understand. The voices of characters whose names I've forgotten call out to me.
No, I didn't forget them. I was just testing you.
I remember, Jonathan. I'll follow her. Somebody!
He's just shouting this in the middle of the street.
Out of my way! Eric told me where to go, and he's just pushing people downstairs.
He's like he's like going around the street, running directly into people and like turning directions so he can shoulder them out of the way. Right, there's like 5 people on this entire road, and you hit all of them, and you're circling back around to shoulder check them out of your way.
Get out of my way! Yummy told me where I needed to go! Right, that's not even a name!
Wait, that one actually exists. So, he's looking around, and he misses Emma again. But then, homeless Santa Claus points out, wait a minute, you're missing your necklace. And so she's like, oh yeah, I'll go check outside. And she spots it on the ground and picks it up. And Ray and Norman and Gilda and Giselle and Dawn are all there. And she's like,
stupid hat girl.
It's Jillian. That's what her name is. It's not Giselle. So they're like, yay, we found you, Emma. We've been looking for you, Emma. Oh, you've been Emma. And Emma's just like, who are you? So she, of course, has no memory of any of this. And they're like, no, we thought we'd finally found her, but there's no numbers on her neck. Does she not know who she is? And so Ray's like, I have baby memories of the conversation Emma had. And he's like, so your family really was taken from you. You lost your memory. You were separated from us. And her memory and all the connections with us were taken from her and put into me.
Now I'm the leader of the group. Everyone loves me as the leader of this family. Goodbye. Goodbye, Emily. And he pushes her down the stairs.
It just like opens up a pit. Goodbye, everyone.
Like, Ray, what did you think you were doing? What do you think this is accomplishing?
We haven't done a lot of #Ray lately, but this is gonna be our last chance to do it while talking about the Promised Neverland, so might as well get it in.
Yeah, we're just gonna cram it in everywhere.
I don't know how we can have a flashback if Emma doesn't remember this, but anyway, we have a flashback to her making the deal with and him saying, the future you want beyond this wish is to laugh and live with your family. But Emma's like, yeah, but this isn't a sacrifice. It's selling my selfish request. It's not very selfish to just want to live in peace and have everyone be all live in peace, but whatever. She did it. She's like, because this is the only solution she could have that wouldn't require anyone to die or for her to have to lose anyone. And she says, of course I want to be with everyone. And this decision will probably anger them. But this way, everyone can go to the human world. There will be no demons, there will be food, no one will be terrified, they will never have to kill. No problems will exist on Earth, ever. And this way, everyone can be free, we can stop the tragedy, and from now on, everyone can live happily. So this is the best future I could hope for. And of course, in the present, everyone's really upset because, oh no, Emma doesn't remember them. And they're sad for her because, oh no, you've had so much taken away. And Gilda's getting in her face, being like, you don't remember us! So, Emma kind of shoves everyone off, and she's getting really upset. And Phil Rouse says, the woman is scared! So, Norman, however, is the only one to say, thank goodness. He starts to cry in relief because he says, even if your memory's gone, I'm glad you're alive. You're eating well, you're healthy, you don't have any injuries, smiling. You haven't seen her smile to this point. I don't know what kind of, for all you know, that guy's abusing her. Anyway, so, but I know you're not alone, so we're glad that, the fact that we were able to meet you here, I'm happy for that. We've all been well. We're all going to school now. This is the 2 or 3 panels to have where are they now talk.
I legitimately, until they brought them up, completely forgot Sislo and those were actual characters. For some reason, I was like, they all died fighting the queen, didn't I? I was like, no, they technically survived, and I guess are all gonna live happy lives.
Because they used Adam's special DNA to cure them. Yay, weren't we happy? We had a whole plot thing about that. Anyway, everyone survived. Norman survived. Hooray. The children from the mass production farms don't need the help of respiratory systems and can even walk on their own. Okay, everyone's going to school now. Aishi hasn't killed me either for now. Like, all right, that was a thing too. Glad that we had that whole thing where she fucking hated Norman for killing her dad. Awake.
Oh yeah, thank God Chris is awake. I hope that fucker was in a coma for like 6 months. Like, it's fucking stupid. Why was he sick? I don't even remember what was the cause anymore.
He got shot in remember when the 2 nameless guards got shot in the head? He got injured at the same time.
No, I don't. I just remember we had to get him medicine.
There was a whole thing. Yeah. And that was why Anna was useful for one arc. By the way, I don't think she gets a line in this chapter.
No, why would she? Well, we don't have time for her. We have to talk about Chris.
So, anyway, Norman wraps up by saying, we're all happy now. This is what you wished for. The results of your decision turned out to be great. And everything we have you gave to us, you paid for it with everything you had. But even so, I wanted to be with you. Have you smiling with us. And Emma's like, I don't know who these people are. Who the fuck are they? And why are they unloading all this shit on me? But she's crying and she doesn't know why. And she's like, even though I don't know them, I can't remember. Why does it feel warm but also painful in my heart? And she says, I feel like I've always wanted to see all of you.
That's and okay, Emma. I'd cry if I weren't #Ray too. A hellish existence.
I just, use this eyedropper to because, all of you were crying and, I put the eyedroppers in my eyes before you started crying. I actually started.
Yeah, I'm a big tough guy. I never cried before at anything, but I wanted to cry because you were all crying. I made crying cool.
You were crying because I was crying.
Yeah. I'm a trendsetter. I was crying before it was cool.
So, narration says, there was a future we wanted. A destiny we couldn't change. We fought and fought back. We grasped something. We lost something. And, of course, there's one last flashback to us saying, you'll never see your family again. So what? We wanted to see you. We've missed you for so long. And Norman says, it's okay if you forgot. Even if you can't remember. Even if you're different from who you used to be. Once more, and forevermore, let's live together. Screw destiny! And they all hold hands. The end.
And that
I'm so glad that we dedicated these chapters to having Emma lose her memory if it didn't matter.
So, there's a part of it I actually do kind of like. That they don't go back on it. It's not something they go back on. She doesn't get her memories back at the end of this. She's not the same person. It's just like this idea that the feelings tied in with these people are enough that she can recognize there were those feelings. That's fine. This whole little thing here, in a vacuum, it's fine. As an ending to the Promised Neverland, this was very boring. It doesn't really leave you excited. It should have just ended with them all transported to America, and you're like, holy shit, it was our world all along, as opposed to like 2 chapters of this and then no conclusion for any other character, which I guess is pretty par for the course when it comes to Promised Neverland, because no character except Emma has mattered in any stretch of time longer than like 2 months. Norman was supposed to be a war criminal. He did all these awful things, and there's no delving into any part of that aside from him saying, Aish hasn't killed me yet. I don't know if that's supposed to be a joke or if he's like legitimately concerned that she's just going to take his life one day. We're not going to address it. Everyone's happy. Credits.
Can you think of a single plot contribution Ray actually made since like Goldie Pond, other than, and he was also there when Emma did a thing?
No. He went with her into the dream and then got kicked out because he wasn't special enough, or he wasn't able to get there. So, yeah. So no, he's inarguably the third most like important character in the series. Like you can't even try to pretend like someone else is in that spot. It's Emma, Norman, Ray, and then fucking a collage of characters.
There was like Phil was given this big important responsibility when he was left in order to look after everyone because the older kids were leaving, and he did nothing. There was that whole thing where it's like Dawn and Gilda are like just as important now, and then they did nothing. It's so weird that we kept on getting these important. Aishi had that whole big thing where it's like, oh, she's so mysterious and she never talks, and she only speaks the demon language, and then we had that big reveal about the conditions and why she talked that way, and the fact that she was there because because she hated Norman, and that was why she was actually going to help them, and then she did nothing. So what the fuck was the point of so much of this stuff?
It's annoying because the Promised Neverland is maybe the best example I can ever think of because often when you talk about a narrative, you talk about story, like plot versus characters. And generally, I find most stories tend to be more about characters than story. I like, in my mind, I can almost never think of something where I'm like, no, I just really don't. It's just kind of the story, and the characters don't matter. Promised Neverland is a perfect example of a story that had its own whims and a character, like a cast that is just so irrelevant to it. It's essentially like playing in like a homebrew D&D campaign where the DM is like, we're going to do the story I want to tell. And you're like, I guess we're just along for the ride. And that's essentially the crux of this all. Like, I don't want to like poop on the Promised Neverland because the first
I do, because I feel comfortable doing it, because it is... it's not beating up on a bad series. It's beating up on a series that has gotten so much acclaim and has gotten a bajillion tie-ins and adaptations and stuff. There are going to be 2 live-action series of this, Chris.
My point was that I wanted to specify the start of the Promised Neverland was very, very good.
It was.
Like I feel like it was, if not our series of the year, it was one of the ones we talked about. I know we definitely considered Emma as like a protagonist of the year at one point. There was a point in time where the Promised Neverland wasn't just good, it was great. And obviously it's waned and kind of waxed a little bit and then just fell off a slope somewhere in the last like 4 months. And there's a part of me that's like a little sad it's gone. But then there's another part of me that's like, sweet, one less manga to read every week. And that's legitimately the end of my personal feelings towards the Promised Neverland. There is no other feeling in my heart left to the series beyond that. And that really is sad to me.
I do agree with that. Like, a lot of my feelings of the Promised Neverland in the last several months have just been, when is this just going to be over? Like, I just don't care anymore. And that does definitely upset me, because I do remember that, when the series was like in its beginnings, we were really into it. And then when it got to the end of that first arc, we were like, that was amazing. and then they were in the forest for a little bit, and it's like, this isn't quite as good. And then they did the Goldie Pond thing, and it was like, well, yeah, there's definitely some good parts to this. It's kind of weird that, they're just using guns now.
Yeah.
And then there was that time skip, and it sucked basically after that. And so, yeah, it's disappointing that a series that, and it's really weird to see, because there are a lot of people who have discovered the series now because of the first season of the anime, which stopped at the point that first story arc concludes with them escaping Gracefield. And there's all these people who are into it now and are discovering it and stuff like that. And I'm just thinking to myself, you have no fucking idea what you're getting yourself into. It is literally never going to be as good as that again. And just never going to even get close to as being good as that again. And it upsets me because it's just like, it brings back and refreshes the memories I have of how good it was. And it brings it into stark contrast to how things have been in the past year and a half, really, is where I've been really negative on that.
Yeah. It almost it almost makes me kind of wish that maybe the anime could take like a Full Metal Alchemist kind of direction. Like it could just create its own narrative at some point. Because, I mean, maybe it just won't ever finish. But like I struggle to think if anyone's going to want to follow like animating the rest of that story. Like I there's some people out there who this probably still is a great story and it means something to them. I'm not trying to say anything bad to that. But I just, for a story that seemed to be about Emma having to overcome these immense odds because of her crazy, I should say crazy, but her devotion to finding like a peaceful way to resolve everything. And in the end, everything felt like it came pretty easily. And then it kind of felt like it was pontificating a little bit. And then it kind of felt tone deaf. And then it just kind of felt like nothing anymore because there wasn't even a spark of joy left in the series anymore. It was just ending, but taking a really long time to get out of there.
God.
Like that moment when a party's done and the one last person's around and you're just like, hey, you're my least favorite person at this party. And even this is still like, could you just leave? Could you just go home? I want to go to bed.
I can't think of a more depressing way to describe the series, so I think we hit the right one there. Okay. Let's finish with One Piece.
One Piece, super.
So I had a breaking point while I was reading this chapter 982, Scoundrel Meets Scoundrel, where I was eventually like, who are some of these people? Why don't I just make Chris recap like One Piece?
Yeah, we can always do that if you want.
I might have to do that, especially since you don't have to do Seven Deadly Sins anymore. But we'll figure it out later. All right. So Black Maria is with Kaido now. Who's Black Maria? I don't know. She's a woman who is apparently very large.
She's one of the Tobirasu.
Okay. Tobirapo.
Tobirapo.
Right. She was the large one with the Tobirapo. Right. See, I'm bad at this, Chris.
Well, Nick, Kaido is one of the 4 emperors.
What?
Luffy is a pirate. He has the ability to turn into rubber. He ate
a second. I've been reading a series about a pirate this whole time. Hold on. So, all right. She's cozying up to Kaido as they're having a big party, and of course Orochi is there and stuff. And Orochi's talking about, yes, soon Kandro will arrive. His acting role will be finished after 20 years. But Kaido's like, yeah, it's very impressive. I could have easily killed him without realizing it. If a man who was so utterly trusted claims that Odin never told him anything, then it would seem that he gave no hints to his samurai about getting to Laugh Tale. And so at that moment, Kandro arrives, and I'm not the first person to make this observation, but is Kandro a giant now? Because
I like to think
he's like palming Momonosuke. So
I like to think, so if you ever played World of Warcraft, there's a very fun thing in that game where when a character has to go from being a regular character to being a boss, they slowly get larger and larger because when you inevitably have to fight them in a raid, they have to be so ginormous that they don't get lost around like 69 people cracking at their ankles or whatever. So you'd see like a regular character who you just met like the other day who was like a normal sized orc model, and then they become evil and they're like 16 feet tall now, and you're like, yeah, you're a boss. I get it. And I was like, that's exactly what's happening with fucking Kanjuro. He became a bad guy, so he had to get really big so you'll know when enough characters are punching at his ankles.
Works for me. So that whole thing in a previous chapter where Momonosuke was like hiding a knife, seemingly, or getting ready to hide one. Yeah, Kanjuro just says, yeah, he cut his ropes and tried to escape, so I had to pacify him, which basically means you just beat the shit out of this little kid because he's an asshole.
He really looks like he pummeled him.
He's got swelling everywhere and is bleeding from his head and mouth. And ugh. But Momonosuke is still alive. He's, just had the shit beaten out of him. So Orochi is very pleased by this. And Kaido says, I do remember you. You were one of the Yakuza and and I remember you very well. And he remembers, mocking Momonosuke when he had him in his grasp. And so Momonosuke is thrown to the ground, and Orochi says, let us raise a toast to Kanjuro. But Kanjuro makes his report and warns them about what is going to happen now. And Orochi's really pissed off about this because, like, well, that was your information that, and so Kanjuro apparently is still under the impression that Kinemon kept him out of the loop on purpose, but nope. So, yeah, the fleet is coming to Onigashima, and so he starts to freak out about this. People are telling him, like, no reason to fear yet. There's not been a single ship at dock, but the trio of battleships we sent out have not yet returned, and 4 pirates have been sighted on the performance floor outside, referring, of course, to Luffy and Zoro and Killer and Kid. So they say, like, it's entirely possible that those pirate crews have already disembarked on the island. And, of course, they're pissed off to hear this, but he explains, well, Master Queen's handling the situation, so I thought it best not to disturb the feast. There aren't any suspicious samurai that anyone has seen either. So, anyway, we've got everyone here on the island, so nothing can possibly happen. And Orochi is freaking out, of course, because he's like, oh god, the ghosts are coming for me.
Yeah,
and Momonosuke, meanwhile, Momonosuke, of course, has a little bit of hope now as well because, he knows that Luffy's on the island. But he's also worried because he hasn't heard that Kinemon's there and there are no ships and stuff. Orochi grabs Momonosuke and just, like, squeezes him in his one hand. And he's like, I won't forget. This is the enemy's leader. Arrange a crucifixion stand on the stage. I will kill the last surviving Kozuki here and bring their history to its miserable end. And then this whole ordeal is behind me. I gave a shot at it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. That was a very good attempt.
We cut out to the sea outside of Onigashima, and to the submarine that the Akazaya 9 are in with Law. I forget what Law's ship is fucking called.
I don't.
If it has.
It probably does. Who cares?
So they're communicating via Denden Mushi with Cat Viper, who is now with Whitebeard's old crew with Marco. And so they're talking about that, and they're like, well, I hope that we're able to get in position the way that we're planning and stuff. I hope that Momonosuke stays safe. Cat Viper reports to Marco that everyone sounds good, and they're in the middle of the raid. Marco asks Cat Viper, what was the point of me asking you to send a message to Straw Hat Luffy? And Cat Viper's like, well, yeah. Anyway, I'll toss out this note then if we don't need it, since we already communicated this. And so he tosses out this little note that just says, I might be late, but I'll be there. Marco. And it falls into the ocean. This is an odd detail that I'm sure won't come up again.
Well, I thought maybe it will. It is Oda. There's always a chance it could come up later, but it seems relevant that Cat Viper, I guess, just didn't think to say anything. I understand the narrative reason. It gives Luffy a reason to not think there's more reinforcements coming. Like, he shouldn't expect that fucking Marco is going to show up. But it is kind of a moment where you're just like, scratch your head, like, yeah, I mean, this was kind of pointless now that you pointed out. I mean,
Denjiro is with his team in the south, and I do like the way that this plays out. So Sasaki of the Tobi Rappo sees him coming, and it's like, "Oh, Kyoshiro, I heard you weren't coming this year." Yeah, it's a surprise. What happened to your pompadour? Anyway, well, I wasn't expecting you to slip out of the feast too. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's Kaido's kid. You know, he's missing, and but must be still on the island. So I've got all the boys looking for him, and they just put him in sea stone manacles and chain him up, and he's like, "What are you doing? What's going on?" Like, all right, well, the Tobi Rappo dealt with.
Yeah, I'm sure he won't come back up.
Denjiro starts to take his coat off and adjust his kimono and stuff, and he shows off like this big ass tattoo that he's got, and he says, "Do you know much about Wano's history, Sasaki?" And then we do a time skip, and so, you know, people are still moving and stuff. We cut to where Chopper is, and remember Big Mom saw him through the window, and she's just chasing Usopp and Chopper as they drive backwards in the tank while shooting at her.
I do have to love that poor Usopp and Chopper are like, "We're gonna take the tank, we'll be so safe," and I'm like, "Oh god, we're being chased by an emperor! Why is she? Ah!"
Kinemon is glad that they're going in the opposite direction, so that means that he and his men can get out of the water. I do like the small detail that, because he, of course, has the devil fruit, that he has to be pulled out of the water. He can't swim. And they rush in the opposite direction. Meanwhile, Nami and Kira and Shinobu had all gotten out of the tank, and so they're running off separately from Usopp and Chopper now, because we don't have enough groups to follow at this point. We need more. However, Prometheus suddenly spots Nami and her what's her weather Climattact starts to vibrate and rattle. And Prometheus is like, "It's the woman who kidnapped Zeus," and just goes immediately full flaming hell mode as the women freak out. And we cut inside of Kaido's castle. Page One and Ulti are running around the place, and Ulti is acting kind of bratty, basically, because she's like, "Oh, I can't go on, Pepe, carry me." And Pepe's like, "Well, it's not my problem, stop running." And she's like, "No, you're supposed to carry me!" And she jumps on his back. And, of course, Page One falls down the fucking stairs and lands right next to Luffy. And, you know, the gifters who he's with are like, "Is that Ulti and Page One?" And Ulti looks up at Luffy, and she says, "Who the hell are you?" And Luffy says, "Who are you?" That's where the chapter ends.
So, I mean, it's kind of exciting. There's a couple things that are going on. I honestly, I really like Page One's design. Like, we only saw him before when he was in his Zoan form, and I don't know why seeing him now, there's an aesthetic there that I'm like, I dig this. I like it. He looks so beleaguered with this big side, like, fluffed hair, and he's just getting ridden on by fucking Ulti. So it's fun. I don't know what this Luffy's I don't think is going to fight them, because that would be weird if Luffy took out two of the strongest members of this group. I was like, "Oh, don't we have a bunch of fights to do?" So I'll be curious. This might just be an opportunity to show off what Ulti's power is.
Yes.
And maybe it's an opportunity to kind of stall Luffy a little bit. But there's a lot going on. As the only part of the chapter I really don't care for, despite the fact that I think it actually is cool that Marco is there, which is weird because I hadn't given a fuck about Marco to this point. But there is a moment where you're like, "Oh, fuck yeah, Marco's there. He kicked down that boat full of people. That's awesome." It is really weird for him to have like showed up and be like, "Hey, didn't you give Luffy that message?" Since I'm already here, what's the point? Just throw it away. You're like, I guess I still have to read it though. Dickheads.
It is strange. All right. That's it. We're done.
Yeah.
So after technical delays, we have gotten through the episode of Weekly Manga Recap, and want to thank you everyone who listened to the live recording for their patience and everything. And we wanted to thank you, the listener. Yes, you, the person hearing my voice right now, just for listening to the show. It's cool. If you would like to support Weekly Manga Recap, you can do so via Patreon, patreon.com/Weekly Manga Recap. You can also just check out our previous episodes on podbean.com, weekmangarecap.podbean.com. And follow us on Twitter. @WMR Podcast is the official podcast account. Your hosts are @Rolotine and @Nick F. Time. All right, let's name our favorites for this week. Favorite series and MVP.
Favorite series was Mashle. I think that was such a fun chapter. I really, really enjoyed it. And on that same line, my character of the week is Lance Crown. I thought this. I didn't say it too much at the time. I really legitimately thought this was a fantastic chapter of Mashle. I thought it really blended a lot of things. I thought Lance seemed like a really cool character, and it was like, cool, there's a character in a series that's not Mash who I can enjoy.
For a very different reason, too. Yep. So.
Plus, the dude turns into a fucking shark. I mean, come on.
My favorite series this week was Chainsaw Man. I thought that it was just like, I mean, it's, completely changing what the goal of the series is and really twisting on its head what you think is going on, but also kind of confirming things that you had suspected in a way that, hey, governments are evil and Makima works for the government and thus she's evil. So beyond that, I also just really like, the stuff that, Aki's going through and seeing, that it seems like things are going to get even worse for him, which sucks. My favorite character this week, my MVP, I'm actually going to give to Kay from Actage for reasons that I'm not 100% certain that the chapter intended to give me, which were, oh, this girl is a psychopath, and that's how she becomes a better actor, which I think is just a really cool, bizarre approach to it. All right,
and
that is going to do it.
Sasha note, our audience mistakenly got confused and picked Mission Yozakura Family and Motsumi as their favorites. We'll try to get those corrected and let you know what the actual ones were next week. I presume it was anything else but those.
I was following the Discord chat while shortly after the chapters were put up, and yes, there was some very positive reaction to Mission Yozakura Family because despite Asshole Spy's presence, there was some stuff that they really liked between Taiyo and Mutsumi. So, sorry, Chris.
I think they probably typed M and got confused as to how to spell Mashle, and it just ended up looking like that. And that's fine. It's understandable. You have a chance next week to correct yourselves and not pick something that was so boring. But hey, you know what? We all make mistakes.
Squirrel Dude in the chat has an explanation that I like. Our community likes two things, Yuri and Fluff. So,
was there a lot of Yuri?
Damn it! That means we're gonna have to talk about Ayakashi Triangle. No!
Especially when I pull out my Vito in the Brank Beef case. I'm here to show the world. I'm here to show the world.
That title reign ended poorly, and you know it.
Oh no, it's exclusively because that is. I hate Dolph Ziggler. I've always hated Dolph Ziggler. I do not like him. That is the best cash in though of all time. Like the amount of excitement that there was for everybody.
Yeah, well, also because people saw it coming. So, honestly, my favorite is Seth Rollins because it was such a shock and such a perfect get out of jail free card for all of the Roman Reigns hatred and stuff. But in terms of everyone just was able to enjoy it, then yeah, Dolph's.
Yeah, and most hype, I guess I should say.
Special thanks, Ninja X3i for maintaining the spreadsheet, the Google Doc that helps us out so much in terms of keeping recommendations and fan votes for Mission Yozakura Family.
Sometimes they get incorrect. It's fine. He's going to work on it next time.
Steve Mano, artist, Infamous Planet for the framework that goes around the visual stream of the podcast. Milo Jack Stillitz and Winston Cheddar for the opening theme of Weekly Manga Recap. That's going to do it. Next week, hopefully, we'll have Dead Mount Deathplay. It's such a weird title to talk about, but we'll see if we are ready to talk about that next time.
Yeah, we'll see. That is good. Do it. Goodbye.